Tradition. It's a thing we often take for granted. It's something that makes us remember our past and look forward to the future. It represents the best parts of who we are. But we don't always realize that until it's gone. Today marks the return of one of Indiana University's best events. The return of bikers to the tracks, with fans in the stands celebrating the world's greatest college weekend together.
Out of 4, Sigma Chi is going to hold on to win the 44th running of the Little 500.
They're into the final turn. Lucan's trying to hold him off. Lucan's in a big burst, and he wins it for Dodge House.
And the 60th edition of the Little 500 goes to the Cutters.
Here comes Black Key Bulls and Kevin Mangle. They are your 2017 Little 500 champions. It's a sprint to the finish for the 68th Little 500.
There will be sprints, wrecks, shortfalls, and triumphs, but after 200 laps, there will be one team above it all. Today, we return to the thing that makes us great. Today, we return to the one-of-a-kind intensity that can only come on a weekend in April. Today, we celebrate the world's greatest college weekend. Welcome back to the Little 500.
For 69 years, the city of Bloomington convened upon the Little 500 until they couldn't. And now for the first time since Cutters won a second straight in 2019, fans are back for the 71st running of the men's Little 500. I'm Jack Edwards, joined by 2017 champion Charlie Hammond in the broadcast booth, with Griffin Gonzalez and Grace Ybarra in the pits to join us in a moment. But Charlie, there's no better time than Bloomington in April.
Bloomington is alive today. The atmosphere in the stadium is truly amazing. It's great to see fans back. First time since 2019. The weather is beautiful. The sun is shining. It's a bit hot, but I think the riders are ready to go.
Weather is certainly beautiful. For more on that, we welcome in the third member of our crew, Griffin Gonzalez, in the pits.
Jack, I mean, seriously, can you ask for better weather today? 80 degrees, a nice breeze blowing in from the south side. It doesn't get much better than this in Indiana in April. And get this, that win today, reportedly, riders are a little concerned about it. And let me tell you why. When you're riding in a pack with as many teams are in this race, just that little inch of difference can make a huge amount of damage. We could see a lot of crashes today if this wind picks up and keeps it consistent. That can also greatly change the track conditions. For more on that, we go to my partner, Grace Ybarra, for more. Grace?
Grace, with some technical difficulties down there, we'll get back to her in a moment. But Charlie, weather's always been a big factor, especially last year. Race moved to May. A lot of differences there. 2 races on just one day with rain in between. Weather can play a huge impact on any race.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially with Little 500, it's such a unique race in that it's run on cinders, and any day, depending on the weather, the cinders can be in a very different condition. And on top of that, on a hot day like today, with 33 riders riding on it for 200 laps, it's going to deteriorate a little bit. The wind is going to dry it up. The sun is going to dry it up. So hopefully there won't be too many crashes, but it's definitely a little bit, I'm a little bit worried for that happening.
And in terms of you as a rider, you rode with BKB back in 2017. We're seeing some of the footage from last year of one of the biggest crashes down towards the back end of the race in lap 197. Took out several contenders and played a huge impact on those proceedings. Last year's race, do you foresee similar crash rates in today's contest?
I do think last year's track was truly one of the worst conditions I'd ever seen. It was kind of, a culmination of weather the leading up, but hopefully it will be less this year.
Yeah, and in terms of for today's contest, if you're a rider, Charlie, what are you looking for in terms of the best ideal weather conditions for a race?
Yeah, I mean, the sun is, it's pretty hot today. It's nice when a few clouds run in and kind of take some of that beating sun off the back of your necks. But 65 degrees, a little cloudy, those are like really ideal conditions. It's beautiful here for the fans today, 80 degrees and sunny, but the riders are definitely going to feel it. Hydration is key today. I hope all the coaches in the pits have, ice socks ready, water ready, Gatorade mix, stuff like that, because it's definitely going to be tough on the riders' bodies today.
Another factor with the pandemic, the race being moved to May, there were only 23 teams in last year's players field, now back up to the max of 33. How much of an impact does that extra 10 teams play on all of the other factors that you've mentioned already in today's broadcast?
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, when there's smaller amounts of teams, it's tough to like maybe lap the field. You got to catch on to, you know, a smaller pack. But with this bigger pack today, you know, see teams like Phi-Side trying to lap the field after, you know, yesterday's win with Melanzana, the same thing. So, you know, there's definitely more teams, but that also means there's more opportunity for crashes.
And we'll go back now to Gracie Barr, the fourth member of our crew, for more on the track conditions in today's contest.
Paul Smith, a junior from
Let's try this one again. When we were talking about the wind earlier, but I think the heat is what's going to disturb these riders a little bit more. They wet the track ahead of the race, but the sun is going to continue to dry it up during the race. We talked to Greg Goat, and they said that it's going to start out at like a cement sort of substance, but as the sun dries it out, it's going to turn into more of a loose sand substance with those cinders on the track and make it a little bit more difficult for those riders.
For mechanics to get involved with, we're going to go back down to Griffin Gonzalez, who's with the SIGEP mechanic.
Yeah, Jack, here with SIGEP Mechanic. This is the legend, Mr. Craig, right here. Now, these guys are the unsung heroes of the race. They make sure all the bikes are tuned up, and that's something that's really important in a race that goes 200 laps.
It certainly is. Yeah, we spend quite a bit of time making sure they're in good condition. Something that comes into play is tire pressure on race day. The track changes conditions throughout. So the other thing is we change the saddles because the riders are of different heights. So we're pretty busy after the race starts.
So tell me, Craig, what is your day like today? I know you got a lot going on, but what will you be doing as these guys are going around the lap?
Well, I'm probably as nervous as they are. One of the big things is I keep an eye out. So if there's any kind of accidents, I'm ready to go across the track and deliver a bike.
Now, Craig, I got to ask, we haven't seen a Greek team win in a long, long time. Is SIGEP going to be the team to break that today?
I think it's possible. We have a good crew. We really do.
Craig thinks it's possible, guys. If Craig says it, I mean, it must be true, right? Back to you guys upstairs.
Craig is a very trustworthy source. Thanks for that, Griffin. A lot of technical aspects to today's race. A lot of storylines, especially, to follow heading into today's race. No race in 2020, no fans in 2021, still no shortage of points of note. Phi-Side, current pole leader, sitting in first place, have had two chances in 2019 and in 2021 to really, you know, it was their race in those years, wasn't it, Charlie?
Yeah, absolutely. In 2019, they exchanged on lap 200, kind of made a tactical error. They had an 8-second lead leading into lap 200, and they exchanged, lost the lead, and ended up, you know, losing the race. In 2021, they lapped the field pretty early on in the race, but as soon as they lapped, they got crashed out by Jet Black. It was a really hard thing to see. So I know Andrew Laval has been on both of those teams. He is by far one of the strongest riders in this race, and I know he wants to get it done this year.
He was exchanged to by his older brother Albert Laval in that last lap in the 2019 race. They're aiming to try and improve there for this year's race. Contenders do not start and end with Phi-Side. There are numerous teams of important note for today's race. Black Key Bulls in 2, Cutters in 3, two teams who have won very recently. Charlie, you know, kind of when you look at the contenders, beyond Phi-Side, what are you looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, this is one of the more wide open races I've seen in the last 10 years. You know, most years it really comes down to like 2 or 3 teams that are, you know, probably going to win the race. This year, I think there's 5, maybe 6. Like we said, Phi-Side, BKB has 2 of the top riders in the race, and Logan Brown and Gavin Goody. Cutters, I mean, you can never cut out, you know, Cutters winningest team in history, 14 wins. And Grey Goat, first time in white. You know, they've never won the race. They've got probably the deepest team in the field, you know, given that white jersey. So definitely look to them. And then even in the 3rd row in the 8th spot, Phi Delta Theta, their top rider won ITTs and missing out. You know, he's technically the best rider in the field according to those results. So look for them late in the race to try to sprint for a win.
And in terms of the warm weather conditions, we've talked about it a lot already, 80 degrees. Who does that benefit the most, Charlie, when you consider the weather conditions offered today?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really comes down to the teams that have prepared over the last year, over the last several years. The teams that, you know, are very fit, have really grinded it out. They have that grit factor. Those are the ones that, you know, the heat, it's going to be a problem, but they're going to hydrate. They've been preparing for this, and, you know, they're not going to let it be a factor in their races.
With Audrey, Andrew, and Albert, there's a lot of Lavals around Little 500. For more on that, we welcome back Griffin Gonzalez to the broadcast.
You said it great right there, Jack. There's no family in this race that has a bigger legacy than the Lavals, right? Well, we're here with the founders of the Lavals, of course, Mr. and Mrs., but join us here. Guys, you're a family that is built on biking. Talk to me about how you raise these kids to be so fast on this track.
Well, from an early age, they all enjoyed cycling, especially Albert. If it had wheels, he jumped on it and rode, and Andrew wasn't far behind, and both Albert and Andrew really talked to Audrey about what it would be like to cycle in this community, and it's a wonderful community that they're a part of.
Now, guys, I'm under the understanding that when you guys would go on family vacations, you packed up the bikes and you rode all around. So I got to ask both of you, where's the best place you guys have ridden as a family? I'll start with you, Ann.
We had some great family rides in Florida, and when the kids were young. And what's funny is now they've done some riding as college kids, part of the Little Five community, and they've gone back and they're like, okay, that stretch wasn't that far, was it? It felt really far when we were kids, but it wasn't so bad. So.
We packed up the bikes, 5 bikes on the roof, and the kids early on did Iron Kids races in Iowa, so great pictures of them at 7, 8, 10, and it was a lot of fun.
Now, last year we had a chance to see Andrew have the ride of his life. No quit, no give up, tough rider. This year he's coming back for some revenge, and he really wants to get a win for this five-side team. You guys are sitting at the pole position. How you guys think about this five-side team? How are they going to prepare today?
They have trained so hard all year with the coaches, strength and conditioning with Tom. Dan's been incredible. Zach's been incredible. Scott from their alumni. They have trained all year from that last race, and they're really determined this year.
Hey, determined they are, and I don't know that there's a team in better position to win this race today. The Lavals, of course, they've been doing more off-season training with their kids than anyone in the field, so they're ready to go. Guys, best of luck to you guys today as a family, and we'll see how they fare.
Yeah, thanks, Griffin. Definitely something to watch all throughout today's contest. We'll toss it back across the track for Gracie Barra with words from a Little 500 legend.
Yeah, more on Phi-Sci. I caught up with Dave Blaze ahead of the race, who won it for Phi-Sci in 1962 and was actually who the film Breaking Away was based on. But he was talking to me about how he's a little bit more nervous watching this race than he is yesterday with the women's race. And he said that he really believes in these Phi-Sci guys and that it's tough because they found 2 ways to lose the last 2 races, but with the preparation that they put in, he really thinks that they could come out on top. But with all of that, he said whichever team does cross that finish line first, he's going to be proud of because of how much work all of these teams do to deserve this moment.
Thanks for that, Grace. Talked a lot about Phi-Sci throughout today's broadcast. Let's talk about the team that won last year's race, that were the beneficiaries of some of the crashes throughout the contest, Jet Black. Charlie, you know, with Josh Herbst coming back, collarbone injury, they're a team that they're in 9th. They're wearing that yellow jersey. Underdogs, are they still the team to watch? What do you kind of view Jet Black head in today's race?
Yeah, so Josh Herbst, their top rider, broke his collarbone during spring break, and I think a lot of teams really counted them out of the race once that happened. He's one of the top riders in the field, and you know they graduated a lot of their riders from last year. So after that happened, I think a lot of teams counted him out, but now he's back. You know, his collarbone might not be totally fixed, but you know he's got a lot of grit. He's racing out there, so I do think that they are a team that could win this race.
Yeah, they lost Robert Kahulik and Braden Clemens, who were 3rd and 4th in the ITTs, and a huge part of that team that won. And obviously with Herbst as a freshman, he was really kind of able to kind of just ride on that team. You know, you mentioned this field being pretty wide open with the 5 contenders on the top end. Do you think there's potential for a lower team in 3rd, 4th rows and beyond to really kind of make a leap up the standings to try and be a contender in this year's race?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Fiji and Purple, they're one of the top teams in history. They have 7 wins or 6 wins, so always look for them. They have a great alumni backing with their team, so always look for them to be a dark horse. Bears as well in orange, they've been a great team for the last 5-ish years. They have a great support system behind them, so I know they're good bike racers, and look for them late in the race to make a big move.
So as we see the bikes being laid out for the beginning of the race, let's kind of break down the rules of the race and some of the things to watch out for throughout today's 200 laps in today's contest. Well, the flags are a big factor, as you can see in the lower right portion of your screen. The yellow, the green, kind of signaling riders when to stop, start, keep going. It is a 200-lap race. We see the flags on the screen now. Here, green, start, resume. It's a great flag to see at the beginning of this year's race. Yellow, incident on the track, means things need to slow down, race, usually weather-based, to suspend a race. The blue with the orange through the middle, a faster bike is approaching. you need to kind of keep things rolling. We see here as well 4 riders max per team, minimum of 10 rider changes to watch out for throughout today's contest.
Yeah, you know, the exchanges are such a huge part of the race. It's one of the most unique things of Little 500 is you have to exchange. Like, think of it like a car race when they do pit stops. You got to get off the pack, you got to slow down, exchange the bike or exchange the rider, and then get back up to speed. So you're losing, you know, 4, 5, 6 seconds when you do that. That's a big part of the strategy behind Little 500, because if you're going to get a big gap, you got to make sure those riders are staying out there for a long time, because as soon as you exchange, you're losing that 5, 6 seconds. So it's awesome. Exchanges are one of the coolest things of Little 500, and all the teams do have to get 10 in today.
Oftentimes, the signal of a very good team is good at exchanges. Qualls, a good representative of that. Finishing second in qualls was Black Key Bulls, and for more on them, we have Griffin Gonzalez.
Yeah, and we had the chance to sit down with Black Key Bulls a few weeks ago at Lenny's, and let me tell you, this is a funny group of guys. This is actually a group of guys that is going to work really hard this year to try to win it all. They placed second in quals. They feel like they have the team that they can do to beat it all. I will say, though, they have great leadership in their alumni, and they do love Charlie a little too much. They said he thinks they're rooting for you, Charlie, but they're not sure on that one. They think you're going to be a little unbiased this year.
I can definitely monitor the bias up here with you, Charlie.
Yeah, you know, it's tough. I love my Black Key Bulls, but there's some really great teams this year. I do think they're one of the favorites, but some of these other teams could definitely get the W today.
And you mentioned other teams. Chi Alpha, they finished 4th last year with just 3 riders, returning their best rider, Jazz Briggs, who broke his collarbone just a few weeks before the race. Kind of what do you see from Chi Alpha potentially in this year's contest?
Yeah, Chi Alpha, you know, it's such a great to see teams. You know, last year they were a huge contender in this race. I think last year was really the first year that they were one of the top contenders. So it's awesome seeing them come back with Chase and Jazz and Carson and Jonathan as well. I really do think that they could be a dark horse. Those guys love riding bikes. You see them at the track all the time. You see them, you know, doing big long rides out on the road. So I hope that they have a great race.
And with Chase Madsen in 13th ITTs, Jazz Briggs, Jonathan Frazier, both just 2 spots outside that top 20. They didn't do team pursuit, didn't participate in that, and quals just 11th. So not a ton to base off of. So they really could be a team that could leap high up from their position currently in 11th. These last few moments before the race, Charlie, for you, what's the biggest key for teams to get ready as they amp up towards the race?
Yeah, absolutely. This is where you see those contenders. They get that killer instinct. Like, they are so focused. They are ready to get on the bike. You know, they're ready to get this thing started. It's always good to see some of the top guys, you know, staying loose, but just ready to focus on getting the race started.
And in terms of, as we kind of see the beginning of today's pre-race processions, with the 33 teams, you mentioned crashing a lot. What's the key in these opening 5, 10, 15 laps, which, you know, not a guaranteed crash that early on in the race, but if you use the pass as a precedent, you would expect one to happen. What is the key for teams lower in the pack, higher in the pack, to kind of position themselves best for when things kind of don't go their way?
Yeah, absolutely. There's generally most years there's a crash in the first, say, 10 laps of the race. You know, teams are excited, it's going fast, you know, there's an overlap of wheels, something like that. It's very important to stay at the front of the pack if you're a top team. If you find yourself near the back, make sure that you have an exit strategy if a crash happens in front of you. So watch for teams that have their heads on a swivel, making sure that they're putting themselves in the right position. That's one of the biggest things about bike racing. Just as much as it is fitness, it is strategizing, it's pack management, it's knowing where you are compared to your competitors. So watch for the top teams to, you know, have their heads on a swivel and making sure they're putting themselves in the right position.
Seen a bit of race director Hank Duncan milling around down there before he hops into the car to begin the pace lap, that beginning in just a few moments, you know. But heading into this race, Charlie, we're not going to get your prediction just yet, but if you're going to kind of give the audience a bit of a teaser, what is, I guess, the biggest key for a team if they're going to want to try and win today's race?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of teams after last year, when, you know, there was that big pile up on 198 and a lot of the contenders got taken out of it, a lot of teams don't want to leave it to chance in a sprint. You know, at the end of the day, even if you're the best sprinter, there's a lot of luck that comes involved. So, you know, teams like Phi-Side, teams like Grey Goat, like, they want to do a breakaway so that it's not left to chance. So look for those, you know, late in the race, maybe even Phi-Side early in the race. They did it last year. They lapped the field, you know, before they got crashed out. So with the track deteriorating over 200 laps, it might get a little dicey. So see teams to try to take that, you know, luck element and that risk element out of it and try to break away.
You mentioned that word chance a lot, and when you talk to teams, they're saying they want to win, but a lot of times the factors aren't always up to them. You know, kind of as a rider, how do you grapple with that when you realize that crashes in front of you that kind of take you out without your ability to escape it? when a lot of chance exists, how do you kind of grapple with that when trying to contend like a Black Key Bowls or a Phi Psi when your goal is to win? How do you grapple with that chance?
Yeah, you know, it is really tough, but that's where the preparation comes, and coming to track practice throughout the spring, knowing which teams are, you know, the good wheels to follow, knowing who's, you know, maybe a little bit sketchier, to be truthful, you know, and just making sure you're putting yourself in the right position. But it is a really difficult thing, and I think, you know, the teams that are really have a chance at winning just kind of are content with it, and they know that it's a possibility, and they know that they've prepared, and if they do get in a crash, they're going to do everything they can to get back with the pack.
Seeing those riders sitting there, what's going through their minds leading up to this race?
Yeah, you see them just hanging out, sitting in the chairs. Like, honestly, they're just ready to go. I think most of them are probably just zoning out. They've got that, you know, I'm excited, I'm ready to beat up on the people around me. They've got that killer instinct, and, you know, I think they're just excited to get on the bike.
And a small thing for you, Charlie, before we kind of take a quick break. Do you start your best rider in a race?
Yeah, that's a really good question, especially with the wind today. You know, with the wind, there might be a little bit more crashes, so you want to make sure you have your experienced riders on the bike first so that they're handling the pack really well. So you don't necessarily want to put your best rider on, because they're going to have to, you know, the first rider burns a few matches, as we say. You know, they have to really use some energy to make sure they're not getting in crashes and they're towards the front of the race. So I wouldn't normally put my best rider on, but maybe my second best is a good indication of race starter.
It's a lovely day here in Bloomington. Going down now for the national anthem.
Performs our national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of As the starting riders are coming to the start-finish line, we get ready for racing. We present the Indiana University's men's a cappella group another round with Back Home Again in Indiana. Back home again in Indiana, and it seems that I can see the gleaming candlelight still shining bright through the sycamores for me. The new moon sends all its fragrance from the fields I used to roam.
I dream about the moonlight on the Wabash, how I long for my Indiana home, back home again in Indiana, and it seems that I can see the gleaming candlelight still shining bright through the sycamores for me. The new mown hay sends all its fragrance from the fields I used to roam. When I dream about the Wabash, how I long for my Indiana home.
Another great rendition of that one in Indiana down another round. If you are in the infield, not wearing official credentials as a participant or official, please move into the stands or spectator areas. Only properly accredited personnel are not permitted on the infield for the rest of the afternoon. We now welcome to the stage today's race starter at Grand Central Indiana University President Pamela Vinton.
It is a beautiful day for a Hoosier bicycle race. So gentlemen, ride smart, keep your heads up, good luck and Godspeed. And now for the words we've been waiting for so long. Gentlemen, mount your little 500 bicycles.
Back here at Bill Armstrong Stadium, riders mounting their bikes beginning the 3 laps ahead of the 71st running of the men's Little 500. Going to break down the grid each row by row, telling you what to watch out for from the contenders all the way on down through the race. Kind of starting up top, Phi Kappa Psi, Black Key Bulls, and Cutters, those 3 teams that open things up. Definitely a lot of contenders in there.
Yeah, those are definitely the 3 teams, 3 of the best teams in the race. Andrew Laval, Logan Brown, and Gavin Goody from Black Key Bulls, and Torrin Craymorn from Cutters are some of the top riders in this race. So look for them late in the race to lead their teams to victory.
A lot of winners in that group. In row 2, Grey Goat, Sigma Phi Epsilon, and Bears, 2 teams in there who have never won, and SIGEP, who have won 3 times last in 2015.
Yeah, SIGEP's last win in 2015 was a great victory. You know those alumni are down there trying to lead them to victory again. And Grey Coat, first year in white, in the white jersey, it's awesome for them. So really deep team.
A row 3 that includes last year's winner, Phi Gamma Delta, Phi Delta Theta, and Jet Black.
Yeah, Phi Delta Theta, like we said earlier, one of the top riders in the race, if not the top rider in the race, and Jimmy Kulik. So look for him to try to win the sprint. And Jet Black, returning champions, you got to talk about them in yellow. With Josh Herbst back, look for them, maybe late in the race, breakaway.
Beta Sigma Psi, Chi Alpha, and Forest Cycling making up row 4. 3 teams that have never won, but definitely groups that have a solid chance in this year's race.
Yeah, it's awesome seeing some of those teams at the top of the pack.
In row 5, Delta Sigma Pi, Sigma Alpha Epsilon SAE, and Alpha Sigma Phi in that row 5. Teams with a variety of riders, but you get into those multicolored teams where they definitely would be a surprise if one of them won. Here in row 6, continuing that group, Lambda Chi Alpha, CSF Cycling, and IUDM Cycling, a first ever group there.
Yep, first team, it's awesome to see new teams in the race.
Row 7, Beta Theta Pi, Alpha Kappa Psi, and 3PH Cycling, a team who finished 11th last year but lost their captain Ben Baines to a collarbone injury. Row 8, Evans Scholars, Wild Aces Cycling, and Delta Upsilon make up that group. And in the final row, Phi Sigma Kappa Sigma Chi, and McNutt Cycling. Excuse me, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Pi Kappa Alpha there. In row 10, Phi Gamma Nu, Army Cycling, Nova Cycling. I've gotten ahead of myself there. Going to the row 10, too deep in the order. And now hit row 11, Phi Sigma Kappa, Sigma Nu, McNutt Cycling rounds out the order as the singing intensifies, the car speed increases, and we get closer and closer to the 71st running of the men's Little 500. One final pace lap to go. Charlie, your thoughts heading into the race?
Yeah, absolutely. This final
Actually,
pace
Charlie,
lap.
I'm going to up you really quick. Go to Grace Griffin before the race.
Months months, almost 2 years later, the bikers are back on the track. And before the race, let me tell you, I don't think I've ever seen a group of bikers so locked in. Everybody in this field, all 33 teams, spent all morning focused in for this right here. They want it, and the time has finally come.
Out of the 71st Little 500. The car is gone, and the riders begin, waiting for that green flag to get us underway. Fly Kappa Psi lead things off in the pole. The green flag goes. The green jersey crosses first, and we're underway for the 71st Little 500.
You really saw Phi Psi at the front. They really went into that first lap. They already kind of capped the second row, so now the teams are really filing in nice. Honestly, this is a really safe start to the race.
Very spread out. We're seeing some teams on the outside try and make a move up, but it's definitely an interesting case of if the field kind of bunches up a bit, a lot more potential for crashes there.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things in bike races, kind of the accordion effect. When the accordion is closed and the teams are bunching up, that's when teams, they might not be going as fast. They're going 4, 5, 6, 7 wide. That's when crashes tend to happen. When the accordion is stretched, that's when teams are really filing in together, drafting off each other. The race is a little bit faster and a little bit safer.
Beta Theta Pi in 19, the team that decided to eat the win the most, to lead things off in today's race after one first lap.
Yeah, Beta Theta Pi.
Seconds.
Yeah, Beta Theta Pi is one of the best teams in the history of Little 500. They have a new coach this year, and John Heidemann. He's a great coach, great rider from the past. I'm excited for them to have a great race today.
Some multicolored jerseys leading things off. Delta Sigma Pi, the team that is out front at the moment. We see some of the leaders kind of falling in, not wanting to lead the pack early on.
Yeah, in today's racing, Little 500, a lot more teams are willing to kind of hide behind most of the race, make big attacks late in the race. So see a lot of those top teams do not want to pull too much.
Out in front, still Beta Theta Pi, who's deciding to pull quite a bit. Phi Delta Theta coming out now to take the front of the pack, following in behind Cutters, who have been a big part. Phi Kappa Psi right in behind them as well.
Yeah, it looks like the pace is pretty hot right now. It looks like they're doing 36, 37-second laps. Those are, pretty decently fast laps for early on in the race, so it's good to keep it hot soon.
We see our first crash towards the back end. Looks like McNutt is one of the teams down there. About 3 teams falling, and towards the back end of the pack, another crash, 2-team crash right there. Interested to see if the flags will stay down. It appears that they will. Most teams are up, some in the backstretch struggling.
Yeah, it looks like the rider in the backstretch is having a little bit issue with a mangled bicycle. It looks like he got it together. It's great to see the riders pop right back up when they go down. I think they're okay, and I don't think the yellow flag is going to go out.
We saw our first 2 crashes in very quick succession, going from in between turn 3 and turn 4. They're heading back to that spot again.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if that turn 3 is going to be a storyline throughout the race.
So here it is, lap 4. We've seen already our first few crashes of the contest. Some teams now strung out a little bit even more than they were prior. Leading things at the moment in first place, Alpha Sigma Phi, in what has been a very interesting first few laps.
Yeah, it's good to see these teams keeping the pace hot. We did see a couple small crashes. I think the riders are okay, but it's always good to see the pace, being set and stayed hot. Hopefully this is going to be a fast one.
All 5 riders who were involved in those early 2 crashes are back up on themselves. Leading out and with quite a bit, appears to be Phi Delta Theta. But definitely a more strung out field, and definitely a very fast pace. It appears to be slightly, ever so slightly slowing down as we near ourselves into
looks like we have Sigma Phi Epsilon on the front, Chi Alpha kind of coming in through the middle, up to the front now.
Lambda Chi Alpha looking like they're about to take off for a burn. They've got an exchange prepared. But they may be canceling that. Actually, excuse me, they've got the exchange ready for Lambda Chi Alpha very, very early on in today's race.
Yeah, we don't see the first exchange before lap 10, but maybe something happened. He was ready to go in. Ooh, a little bit of a dicey exchange, but I think he's okay.
They kept it in front of that last line to avoid any sort of penalty or warning, and they'll begin to file back into the race.
Yeah, looks like they're going to catch back on the back of the pack. It's good to see that. Yeah, it looks like the 5 teams that got caught up in the crash, 2 of them are rounding turn 4. I think they'll be able to catch back on because the pace at the front is getting a little bit slower. You're seeing the teams bunch up, going 5, 6 riders wide. That's when things are starting to slow down, and hopefully these teams will be able to get back to the pack.
Phi Sigma Kappa Sigma Nu and McNutt, 3 of the teams that were involved in those crashes early on in the race.
Got some more exchanges on the backstretch.
The backstretch.
That was clean. Love to see clean exchanges.
Now here in that back stretch, again, 2 crashes early on in the race. That took out more or less the back 5 teams in the contest.
Yeah, I think ultimately it was probably just an overlapping of wheels. When you're riding this close to each other, you know, it happens, so I'm glad that they're okay though.
Wind definitely has a chance to push riders as they're going through those turns, opportunities there.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried of turn 2 with the wind, turn 3 as well. The wind's coming out of the southwest, so it's kind of coming through turn 4, through, you know, the backstretch. And so that could be, you know, an element later on. Hopefully it won't make riders swerve too much.
Going back through there, and now we have Gracie Barr with a special guest down on the track.
I'm here with Indiana University President Pamela Whitten, and it's her first Little 500. She was here yesterday for the women's race, back here again today for the men's race. But just what have you thought of the entire experience?
It is amazing. I've been to a lot of events at a lot of universities. I've never seen anything like the Little 500. It's fantastic.
There's a lot of tradition associated with it. You were the Grand Marshal here today. How have you taken up learning those different traditions?
Well, I have been fortunate in having so many students willing to teach me throughout the course of the year, so I felt ready by yesterday to have a sense of it. Although I'll tell you, everybody tells you how wonderful it is, and you don't know till you come see it firsthand how special this is.
And this is the first year back with fans since 2019. Obviously, your first Little 500, but just how special is it to see the community come together?
Well, it's such a joy, right, to see, and you can hear, of course, all of our students and the community just coming back together and embracing all that's wonderful about Indiana University.
What has your favorite part been?
Oh gosh, my favorite part. Oh, that's a tough question. You know, honestly, my favorite part is probably when I talk to the various students that are on teams and I hear their stories about how they practice and prepare all year and the funny rituals they have and the funny foods and diets they eat to get ready. It's really pretty impressive. One student told me about a week ago, he said, "Man, I can't believe how much work I put into this for a 2-hour race." And we talked about, yeah, that might be true, but it's your Super Bowl. So he's ready.
So you've gotten to know some of the teams, and I don't think you can probably pull for one specifically, right?
They are all winners in my book. I just hope they have a great race and a great time.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Grace. You know, as a junior myself, Charlie, this is my first time seeing a Little 500 with a full crowd, so definitely a very special day for the community.
Yeah, it's awesome to see. The stadium is truly packed today. I haven't seen a stadium like this since 2019. It might even be a bigger attendance then, so I think all of us were a little bit nervous. You know, like Grace said, there's a lot of tradition behind Little 500, and a big part of that is getting fans in the stadium, so it's so awesome to see the stadium packed today.
Seeing ourselves get into the back end of lap 11 with the lead pack. Appears that Jet Black are taking the front end of it, but a lot of rotation throughout the early parts of today's race. Coming through the back on the inside was CSF Cycling, looking like they're taking off for a burn towards the front end of the race.
Yeah, this is where you're going to see more teams exchange. I would say like laps 10 to 20 is where a lot of the top teams will exchange. More than 20 laps is a pretty long set, I would say. More than 25 is a very long set. So see teams to start exchanging more in the next 5-7 laps.
Well, we've already seen some crashes over there in turn 3. For more on the track conditions over there, we welcome in Griffin Gonzalez.
Guys, we talked about it in turn 1 last year. As the track gets more ridden, slowly those embers, they start to fall apart. They start to get loose. It's like riding on concrete versus riding on sand. We talked about this exactly last year. What we're seeing is the exact same thing happen right now on turn 3. The dirt on the far right side, the outside, is starting to turn into that sand-like substance. It's really hard to control your bike in that. It's a totally different surface. We could see some more accidents coming over here in turn 3.
Yeah, thanks for that, Griffin. Definitely something to watch out for after we saw 2 very early incidents kind of right in turn 3 and kind of in the middle of the backstretch.
Yeah, Griffin is exactly right. Last year was turn 1. It sounds like this year it might be turn 3. So especially in the last lap of the race in the sprint, teams are going to want to get their position before that turn 3 to make sure that they're not crashing into each other.
We see Phi Delta Theta crossing that line first, but always looking over their shoulder, willing to kind of let people cycle in and out of leading this early pack. Still keeping up a very high pace, though, throughout 13 laps of the race.
Yeah, this is when these teams start exchanging. So what they do, what we call a burn. That's when you kind of come from the back of the pack, jump off the front, try to get a big enough gap so that when you exchange, when you take that 4, 5, 6 seconds to exchange, the next rider can just hop right back in the pack. And when that happens, some teams will chase those burns out. The whole pack will go with them, especially some of the teams that are being marked. Some of the top teams, their contenders will mark them and make sure that they're hurting when they have to get back on the bike.
A lot of exchanges in the back stretch. We're seeing another team begin to take off, trying to go forward. Looks like we got 3 PHs going for a burn to maybe make an exchange in the back stretch. It appears they're getting ready to do one of those.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised by how much it's been broken apart already. I think some of those early exchanges really hurt some of the teams. There's, obviously the crash as well, but there's 7, 8, 9 teams that have already fallen off from the main pack. It's only lap 14, so I'm curious to see if that's going to be, continue to happen, or if this is kind of the main group that will stay together for a while.
Seeing it come through into turn 4 now again.
Looks like Phi Delta Theta is going to be doing their first exchange, team 13. Oh, sorry, that's DSP. I apologize.
A lot of blues out there.
A lot of blues out there.
Definitely very easy to throw you off. But we've seen a lot more exchanges in that backstretch than we are with some of the contenders here on the near side. It appears that Kyle may be trying to prepare for something.
I haven't seen any of the contenders exchange yet. It's lap 15. It looks like, so Cutters is ready for exchange. I think they're going to be the first top team to exchange. It looks like their guy has, a good half straightaway gap on the rest of the pack. So it's interesting that the pack wasn't really willing to chase that burn down, but he's going to have a clean exchange, and his next rider is going to be able to hop back right into the pack really easily. That's what you like to see.
Yeah, no marking for Cutters as John Nicholson comes in, exchanging out now for their number 4 rider, Jacob Kuhn, who's getting onto the bike.
He's got plenty of room to get back in the pack. That's what you want.
Yeah, so no marking there. Is that a sign for something to come?
It's interesting. I know Cutters is a contender in this race, and I know the other teams know that, but sometimes early in the race, you don't want to waste your matches too much, as we say. You don't want to burn too much energy. So maybe teams are just more willing to let some of those top teams get off the front and get good burns. Sometimes you'll see top teams go together, but it looks like Cutters did a little bit of an earlier exchange compared to the other teams, so they got to go alone.
And you can already see Cutters coming in around that outside with a lot of energy.
Looks like Beta Theta Pi might be ready for an exchange as well. They're on the back stretch in turn 3. Chi Alpha is going to mark them a little bit, ride that wheel out.
Yeah, we saw Chase Madsen, who's on the bike for Chi Alpha, kind of just watching him, trying to figure out if he could get in behind him, and it is appearing that maybe they are preparing for an exchange Chi Alpha themselves, so use a little bit of their burn to boost their burn a little bit as well.
That's exactly right. That's an experienced rider. When he sees another rider come around him, he gets behind him. You save about 30% of your energy when you're drafting behind somebody, so that was an experienced rider using somebody else's burn to help their burn.
He's coming in, exchanging now for their number 2 rider, Jazz Briggs. He missed last year's race. He's got a decent chance to get back into the pack.
And you're seeing a lot more of the front stretch teams exchanging now. Fiji just exchanged.
We're seeing Phi-Sci preparing for one of their first exchanges as well of the contest.
And so is Beta Sigma Psi in pink. The Beta Sigma Psi got a big gap on their burn. Good for him. It's going to be awesome. This new rider is going to have plenty of space to get back into the pack.
Beta Sigma Psi, Alex Cora going off for Paul Smith.
So look at this. Right now, Phi-Sci is exchanging. They are definitely being marked right now. The whole team is on their wheel. He is not going to get a gap. This is really not what you like to see, but this shows that the whole field knows that Phi-Sci is a contender, and they're going to mark them throughout the entire race. That was Jet Black that was marking them.
We definitely saw a lot of marking there as we see Phi-Sci making an exchange there. Getting onto the bike is Caleb Cooper. But they were marked heavily compared to Cutters.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like Jet Black's exchanging right now. And it looks like Sigap, yeah, he marked him. He rode that exchange out, and I don't think he's coming in for his own exchange. We got Grey Goat ready for an exchange as well on the front stretch in white.
Yeah, so there was the comparison between Cutters not getting marked, Grey Goat not marked too tightly, but also not a great chance to get into the pack for their number 3 rider.
Oh, you almost see that Grey Goat rider impede another rider coming in, but he barely missed it. You really don't want to see those riders when they do an exchange. They have to hold their line. If they don't and they impede another rider, that could be a penalty later in the race.
Nick Ermsher nearly getting into a bit of a wreck as he caught onto the bike for Grey Goat. He's kind of catching back up to the pack, back in the back straightaway. We're also seeing another exchange being prepared on the near side. A bit of a marking there, but also kind of Bears utilizing that for their own exchange. We're also seeing Blackie Bulls take off for one of their own.
Yeah, Blackie Bulls just did their first exchange. That was Andy Yan to Gavin Goody. That was a 21-lap set. Great job from Andy. That's his first little 500, and he had a great set.
And also got on the bike for Bears is Billy Gregory. We did see a huge sequence there of a lot of exchanges, a lot of interesting comparisons in terms of who was chasing, who was marking, and kind of who was allowed to get a bit of a gap.
Yeah, it's interesting. More than anything, Phi-Sci was definitely marked.
We did see a crash over there in turn 3, 2 bikes down. They're saying that there's an issue with one of the bikes. Bears, one of the teams involved right there over in the far side. They're having to get back up to speed. But there is a bike that I believe is not mechanically sound. They're going to have to replace it out there.
Yeah, that's our second crash in turn 3 in 22 laps. So I do think that that's going to be a storyline throughout the race.
Yeah, all 3 of them have been involved in that section of the track.
It's unfortunate to see Bears go down in that. They're about maybe 150 yards down now. They're coming into the stretch while the pack is leaving it. So hopefully they'll be able to get back onto the pack. Hopefully the front pack will slow down a little bit. You don't like to see contenders get out of the race this early on.
Yeah, Bears were debating going in for an exchange, but decided, I think, to stick with the rider, keep him on the bike after he's able to continue going on. Bit of a fall in an exchange.
Yeah, it looks like this Bears rider is going to do one more lap in exchange to his teammate. I think they're going to be okay. He's going to have to burn a few matches to get back on the pack, but I think they'll get back in the race.
Definitely interesting throughout. That was the biggest contender to have a crash early on in the race. We'd seen some teams towards the back end of the order going down. Well, we're going to have some sponsors to thank for today's race. Big part of allowing Little 500 production to come on to the level at which it goes in. NBC, Indy 500, Indianapolis Motor Speedway amongst them, Panaracer, Canary, P-Tex here in Bloomington, Salesforce.org, logos numerous for every team here in the race for the Little 500. They help us put on a fantastic product. We thank all of our sponsors. We're about 25 laps through the race. Charlie, sorry to interrupt you there.
Absolutely, 25 laps in. Phi Delta Theta is currently in first. Sigma Phi Epsilon just took the lead with Phi Delta Theta on their wheel. It is easy to spot SIGAP with those neon green helmets. I love to see that.
Makes it a bit easier to do our job when SIGAP has an identifier like that. They do come in now at first. Phi Delta Theta in second, Sigma Alpha Epsilon third, Beta Sigma Psi fourth, Jet Black in fifth. So none of the 1, 2, 3. And if you're looking at the number 1 Phi-Sci, you have to dig a bit deeper if you're looking for them. They're currently in 15th.
Yeah, it looks like Jet Black is honestly doing an awesome job early on in the race. This is their first year with a new coach. Courtney Bishop had coached them for a long time, kind of a legendary coach of Little 500. Went out last year with a win, and now they have Anthony Vicino in their pit. So he's clearly doing a great job coaching them. They've had a great race these first 25 laps.
Delta Upsilon involved in a crash a moment ago on your screen. They're back up and going. We're still seeing SIGAP pulling around 25 laps into the race. Teams beginning to settle in, but still been a very but has this been a faster pace to start off than you expected, Charlie?
I think so. Honestly, these teams are really willing. They marked Phi-Sci really hard. They're keeping the pace pretty hot. I think, we might see this hot pace for another 25 laps or so, and then we'll kind of hit that lull between laps 50 and 150. You might see some breakaway attempts from like a Phi-Sci trying to lap the field, but I am honestly really impressed with how hot the pace have been the first 25, 26 laps.
We're seeing Bears preparing it for an exchange, trying to recover their position after a crash over in turn 3. Still trying to catch up with the lead pack.
Yeah, it definitely makes it a lot tougher, especially with this wind. When you're out there by yourself and this wind is hitting you, it makes it a lot harder because you don't have that draft to save some energy. So hopefully Bears, it looks like this guy for Bears right now is doing an awesome job. He's really just going all in to get back on the pack. This is sometimes what you have to do, is just burn a bunch of matches, make sure that the race isn't staying ahead of you, and make sure you're a contender. So I think he's probably going to catch back into to the pack this lap.
So want to hit on an individual team as they move up a little bit in the order there. Chi Alpha, a team that's had an interesting last year, finishing in 4th with just 3 riders. This year back with the full 4. We have more on them and their story heading into this year's race.
One against the odds, Chi Alpha finished in 4th place, despite suffering a big setback just weeks before the race.
I think about 3 or 4 weeks before the race, I think I overlapped wheels, and then I just went down and crashed on my shoulder. Broke in like 4 places, and it was like Rice Krispie treats when I came up with my right arm.
Briggs broke his collarbone, missing the race and forcing Chi Alpha to race with just 3 riders. The loss changed the team's strategy.
We had to race like we were a weaker team. It meant that we had to be very conservative about how we played our cards and how we stuck in the pack. Had to use riders in a way that we didn't want to. Ultimately, I ended up riding 100 laps of that race, which is not my strong suit as a racer.
For Chi Alpha and their standards of winning the race, Spring Series did not go to plan.
A lot of our process goals have not been accomplished of, getting the ITT time or getting guys in missing out finals or competing well in like other Spring Series events or qualifications. But what I've been trying to tell the guys is that we still have just as good a shot as anyone else.
In their 4th Little 500, Chi Alpha has grown from 26th to 4th and looks higher as the program continues to evolve.
I'm the first person to go freshman to senior year racing for the team. I'm a bit disappointed that doesn't mean 4 races, but it's cool to have seen the program progress from getting 21st to getting 4th last year and then hopefully winning this year.
Seeing teams progress, Sigma, with a new team on top, Phi Delta Theta, taking first place, a team that we had mentioned as a potential contender. They're currently leading 30 laps into the race, but again, not too much to glean from so early on in the race.
Absolutely. I've been really impressed with the pink team and Beta Sigma Psi. They're a team that hasn't been very strong in the past, and it seems like these riders really came together and wanted to have a strong year this year. It's awesome seeing them have such a great race so far.
They are having their burn, it appears, marked quite a bit, especially utilized in their own exchange by cutters. They're again not marked on their exchange. Seeing exchanges for Beta Sigma Psi as well as cutters.
And this really is a pretty hot race so far. That was another 37-second lap. That's pretty strong for this early in the race. You're seeing a lot of teams right now. There's even a little bit of a gap for the first 4 teams compared to the one behind them. So BKB, Phi Delta Theta. It seems like teams are really, putting the work in at the front.
Back down to Griffin Gonzalez, who has more on the conditions of today's race.
Hey guys, listen, I'm happy to be back at the track. I love it here. But more importantly, I think these fans are happy to be back. Am I right? Hey, I'll tell you what, last year it was dead silent. This year you can feel it, the riders can feel it, and they told me all past few weeks that this is what they were most excited for. They were excited for the race, don't get me wrong, but to have their friends and family cheering them on, that's what Little 500 is all about. And these guys are bringing the hype. Look, we got some jean overalls. Look at those. It's unbelievable. It's Little 5. Can't make it up.
Can't make up the jean overalls. Thanks for that, Griffin. Fantastic as always. Great crowd. It really is the lifeblood of the race.
You really feel the energy. You hear the roar every time the riders come around. It's so special. I'm so excited that we're back here.
So the race appears to have slowed down a little bit. That's just from my perception, but what I'm looking at.
Yeah, absolutely right. It seems like teams are starting to bunch up a little bit more. You can see the effort is not as strong from the top riders. So that last lap was 44 seconds. So that was 7 seconds slower than 2 laps ago. So that is a significant decrease in speed.
What's the cause for that, Charlie? Is that the leader kind of slowing down? Or is it kind of almost a collective, not decision, but a collective decision making by, I guess, everyone?
Yeah,
kind
I
of
think
slowing
so.
down?
Absolutely. So I think some of the top teams are pushing a little bit, and I think they're like, all right, I've done a little bit maybe more than I wanted to. I'm going to sit back a little bit, and then you'll see all the teams like, okay, well, if they're sitting back, I'm sitting back, and then everything will slow down. It will kind of bunch up.
Seeing an exchange here for Fiji on the near side.
We got Jet Black ready for an exchange as well.
Jet Black is going on a burn. They're not going to be marked, so they'll have a chance to get a little bit of a lead out there, as well as Phi Psi. Appears that they're also readying themselves for an exchange.
Yeah, it looks like Phi Kappa Psi as well in green. They're about to exchange. I don't think they have put their top rider, Andrew Laval, yet on the bike. But when he does get on the bike, that's when we're all eyes on Phi side, seeing if he's going to try to make a breakaway.
So Jet Black with an exchange in the far corner. Actually, a crash, to note about. It appears to be 2 riders that are down, actually quite close to their pit. So a chance to really kind of make a quick backtrack and get a new rider on the bike.
Yeah, you see a lot of those crashes in the pits sometimes. People get excited when they're doing exchanges, and sometimes they just make mistakes. So hopefully they can get those jitters out of the way early on and have cleaner exchanges late in the race.
A lot of jitters to get out of the way. 36 laps through the race. On top, Forest Cycling, first time saying their name on today's broadcast. They take the lead. Interested if they're ready for an exchange. They are, as a matter of fact. So they're getting followed a little bit. Maybe not as much of a marking situation, but more so kind of just utilizing their burn. We are seeing Grey Goat definitely pull off for a burn that has not been marked.
Yeah, great burn from Grey Goat. Got a big gap. That next rider is going to come into the field just fine.
We're seeing get on the bike for Grey Goat is Sam Hickson. He'll slide into the pack. With Phi Side a bit deeper in the pack, interested if they try and make a move up to get themselves prepped for their exchange.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what's happening. That rider for Phi Side, yep, coming up right now, just like you said. They're timing it correctly. They've got their rider in the pit ready to go.
So we are seeing them be marked very tightly.
Yeah, Blackie Bowles is definitely marking them currently. I think Blackie Bowles is also ready for an exchange.
Near exchange, near crash, I should say, as we're seeing a lot of teams utilize that exchange.
It's like Phi Delta Theta as well. Phi Kappa Psi both exchanging together. That was good. Management between the two teams, not running into each other. Those are veteran riders that know how to exchange close to each other. That was great to see.
Yeah, with all those contenders in that area, if one team's poor at exchanging, it really can have a huge impact on multiple contenders.
Yeah, that's when it's really important as a rider when you're taking that exchange to command your space, to command the line that you're taking and tell the other teams around you, hey, my rider's on the inside, move out the way. Yeah. That's it's really important for the communication there.
Yeah, we saw Phi Delta Theta with a record lap for themselves on the day with 34-second lap as they ready for their exchange. They slide down to 8th after making the exchange, but definitely not a bad spot to slide to so soon after making an exchange. It was a bit of a poor exchange done in the near side, trying to get back on the bike and recover themselves. On the near side is Sigma Alpha Epsilon. They are back and trying to get back into things with a bit of space to drive into.
Yeah, I hope SAE is able to get back into this race. That's a team that has been very good in the last 5-6 years, so hopefully they're able to get back into the pack and be a contender in this race.
So Blackie Bulls is preparing a rider exchange.
Looks like Gavin Goody is going to exchange to Logan Brown. Those are their 2 top riders. Looks like they've got good chemistry, great exchange, and Logan's going to have plenty of time to get back in the pack.
Yeah, very good burn there to get him a lot of space to even kind of, if he wanted to, really try and slide into that leading area.
Yeah, absolutely. That was textbook exchange right there. So good job, Blackie Bulls.
So we've seen Cutters, Blackie, Grey Goat kind of not been marked too tightly. Has this been more so a product of when teams want to follow for their own exchange, or has there been kind of just a lack of marking for those 3 teams in the 2, 3, 4 order?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it might partially be that those teams just weren't exchanging at the same time, like you said, but it is interesting that they were marked a little bit less that like we saw with the Phi Kappa Psi marking.
No, it is Phi Psi with Carson Etner on the bike.
Yep, Phi Psi on the front, staying safe, which is great. It looks like Cutters are coming up on the inside. Yeah, see, this is interesting. So Phi Psi, is kind of in that like lane 3 area, and a lot of teams, instead of pulling through on the inside, they're just filing behind them. So this is what you'll see very tactically when teams don't want to pull through. And as I'm saying, that Phi Delta Theta did end up pulling through. But teams will do that. They don't want to pull through. They'll just get behind the rider in front of them, and they'll kind of like move out to the outside of the track.
Fido definitely has kind of taken a bit of a responsibility in pulling for a little bit of these teams. We're seeing Sigma Alpha Epsilon also preparing themselves, Sigma Phi Epsilon, excuse me, preparing themselves for an exchange. 3PH also preparing themselves for an exchange. They actually took first place with a 37-second lap, but they will have to make the exchange and obviously fall back into the pack.
Yeah, I think the main pack, they are going pretty fast right now. You know, Phi Delta Theta seems to be a team that really wants to make this race a little bit faster. I mean, they have the top rider in Jimmy Kulik, but they've been on the front a lot, keeping the pace hot as they pull off and saw, you know, Phi Psi come through, Cutters on Phi Psi's wheel. You know, those are the top teams right at the front right now. They're all willing to, you know, do a good amount of the work at the front.
Jesus Garcia getting onto the bike for Sigma Phi Epsilon after a nice burn for them. We're seeing Jet Black pull through on the inside as well to try and take a position up, pulling in this lead pack, which has still maintained a relatively large size. You know, nearing lap 50, Charlie, did you expect to see as many teams kind of in and around this spot as there are?
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, with how fast the pace is, it is a little bit, maybe a little bit bigger than expected, but there are still 10, 12 teams that are off the pack, and there might be some in the pack that are lapped as well. So I think it might be a little bit deceiving how big the pack is.
Well, Grey Goat has been an interesting story all throughout today's race. For more on them, we welcome in Griffin Gonzalez, who is in their pit.
Hey guys, here with Grey Goats captain Jacob Richard. Jacob, so far, pretty solid race for you guys so far. You find yourself in the top 10. How's that track riding for you guys?
I mean, it's pretty good. I mean, I haven't gone in, so really it's looking a little bit dusty. So I'll go out and see it in a little bit. But the guys are looking good. We've got good positioning so far, and ultimately it's playing pretty well because we're able to feel pretty chill at the point.
You're one of the more experienced riders in this year, a 5th year here at Indiana. You've seen this track before. You have a lot of biking experience. For you personally, what does this race mean to you, this being your final one?
I mean, in reality, it's kind of the world to me. Like, there's so many connections and friends and family that I have out here cheering for us today, and all, you know, it's just an amazing event to see everybody come out and become such a great community in reality.
All right, you guys find yourself top 10 now. What do you got to do the rest of the way to keep that top 10 and hopefully finish up front?
I mean, in reality, just stay up there with it. Take it one lap at a time and find ourselves hopefully up there at the front towards the end of the race.
Hey, he's a 5th year. I think he knows what he's talking about, guys. Back upstairs.
Thanks, Griffin. Great insight into the mentality of Grey Goat as we see Beta Sigma Psi take the pole position here nearing lap 50 in today's race. And, you know, he mentioned staying one lap at a time, staying in it. How important is more so not winning the race at lap 50 or at lap 100, or even lap 150, but more so just staying in the race?
Yeah, it is really important. Like, it's always important to be going forward, not backward. I know that seems obvious, but it really is, you know, a key to this race is keeping your head on a swivel, staying out of crashes, just making sure that you're having a safe race and that you're at the front of the race, making sure that if any move happens, that you're there to cover it, you're there to go with it. And that's where, you know, these experienced riders really come into play, you know, making sure that they're aware of those types of moves.
You mentioned experience. Bears, after an early crash, they found themselves back towards the back end, but they're in that lead pack, so they're still in and around the top spots in today's race. So obviously good recovery from them so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seeing that back stretch.
Looks like Phi Delta Theta is on the front again. They really are doing a lot of the work in this race. Same with Jet Black. The yellow team is on the front again. Looks like Sigma Phi Epsilon is on Jet Black's wheel in second. Also having a really great race so far.
Forrest cycling with an exchange there, going a little bit into the Chi Alpha pit. They made sure that they were made aware of that, but Forrest with the exchange, Zach Maudlin getting onto the bike. We have kind of seen, you know, they've come in ebbs and flows. Chi Alpha also preparing for an exchange on the near side, but the contending teams have all kind of followed their own, been making exchanges at very similar moments.
Yeah, absolutely. You see a lot of those teams, you know, they're doing similar amounts of laps and exchanging around the same time. You see that in most races, so. But it's nice to have that happen. It kind of breaks up the race a little bit, makes it a little bit more exciting when the teams are starting to exchange. So you see that SIGAP rider, you saw him flick his elbow, let the Phi Psi person come through. That's kind of the rider's cue, like, hey, I've done my work, I've done my pull, I'm coming off, it's your turn.
What happens if you're the person who has to pull through and you decide not to pull through? What happens in that instance?
Yeah, it gets a little bit weird because, you know, teams, if they don't want to pull through, some of the other teams will kind of yell at them. You know, there's a lot of testosterone in this pack, and sometimes they just get mad at each other, yell at them, tell each other to pull through. But you know, if you're not going to do it, you're not going to do it. So you'll just kind of pull off to the right and make your way backwards.
Fiji Phi Psi, Sig Ep, Phi Delt, and Beta Sigma Psi, the 5 teams that currently sit on top of the poll. We're seeing taking a bit of a small edge out in front is Phi Delta Theta, with their number 3 rider Mitchell Party on the bike. The sponsor graphic coming in as well again. Thanks again to the sponsors who help our teams get on the bikes to make such a great product that brings the community together here in Bloomington. Really is a huge part of Bloomington as an entire campus, as a school, as a student. I'm very appreciative of the sponsors and of the race itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the primary mission of Little 500 is to raise scholarships for working students. Over $2.5 million has been, given to over 5,200 students for scholarships during the life of the race. So it's awesome to see these sponsors, be part of that and make sure that this event stays alive.
We're seeing cutters kind of take a bit of an edge towards the front. Interested if they're readying for something. They have Sigma Phi Epsilon and Beta Sigma Psi kind of following right behind them. They haven't got an exchange ready. They're more so just kind of taking off towards the front.
Yeah, it looks like Andrew Laval in the Phi Kappa Psi pit is off his bike. I'm not sure if he's getting ready to go in, but it looks like he might be. They've got the bike in the pit. He's watching the pack, so I think they might be putting their top rider on the field.
And we do see 3 teams definitely pull ahead. Cutters, Sigma Phi Epsilon, Beta Sigma Psi pulling themselves away from the lead pack, with Cutters doing the pulling there.
Yeah, this is interesting. I mean, Cutters does not have a rider out in their pit currently, so this might be a bit of an attack.
And we saw, I think Andrew Laval was at the edge of the pit, pointing to his rider, saying go after them, because there are now 3 riders who are half a straightaway away from everyone else.
Yeah, and you see Grey Goat, they're attacking this as well. They just got off the pack. They're trying to close this gap right now. They don't have a rider in their pit for an exchange either, so it looks like teams are really eager to shut this down immediately. You don't always see this. Sometimes they'll let these riders kind of get away from them.
We're seeing Beta Sigma Psi, Ben McCune, hitting his helmet saying he wants to do an exchange. He kind of utilized the burn or the breakaway attempt almost by Cutters, and now he's taking off himself. He's not being marked in the slightest, and he's got a rider preparing to come in for him, but they are taking a massive lead on that back straightaway.
Yeah, that's awesome to see Beta Sigma Psi. That was a veteran move. That was great to see him kind of follow out that wheel and burn around them. Right now, you see the Cutters and the Sig Ep riders talking a lot together. It's interesting to see some teams will kind of work together. They'll talk before the race and strategize together to try to break away together. I see Sig Ep and Cutters talking a lot to each other, so I'm curious to see if they have a little bit of a team tactics that they're looking for.
Alex Corrigan on the bike with a huge lead for Beta Sigma Psi, who are currently a decent 6 seconds out in front of the rest of the pack. A chance for him to maybe slide back in. Does he try and keep this lead if you're Beta Sigma Psi out front?
They are a dark horse. They could sneak off the front, and teams might be not willing to chase those down as quickly, but I think what he's doing is just kind of riding his all-day pace, waiting for the teams to catch back up to him. But we do see Phi Psi, they are ready for an exchange, and they are putting their top rider, Andrew Laval, on the bike. He is pumped in the pit. He is ready to go.
Yeah, I can see a bit of a smile from a distance there with a burn in here. Carson Etner getting prepared to bring on one of the talks of the race. Phi Psi, Andrew Laval onto the bike.
Yeah, like you said it. This is where all eyes are on Andrew. He broke away and lapped the field last year, like we said earlier, around, early on in the race. So all eyes are on him right now. I'm curious to see how teams handle it, if they're aware he's on the bike, if he's going to try to do something this early on.
He's sitting towards the back end of that lead pack.
Yeah, I think he's really strategizing right now, thinking about how he wants to handle this. He's a veteran bike rider, a veteran bike racer. So he's always thinking about what his move is going to be.
Grey Goat and Phi Delta Theta were preparing for an exchange, but it was only Grey Goat who decided to pull one off. Right after interviewing him, we have Jacob Richards getting on the bike for Grey Goat. Griffin Gonzalez getting some insight from him before he decided to get a feel for the track.
It looks like we have Black Key Bulls coming down the backstretch with a big gap. They're going to do another exchange as well. It's going to be Logan Brown to Daniel Kang.
Yeah, we saw Beta Sigma Psi, after taking a huge lead out of their exchange, decided to stay inside, or fall back into the pack, I should say. But we're seeing Black Key Bulls with a great exchange attempt here.
Yeah, you see the pack coming out of turn 4, going into turn 1. It already looks pretty dusty. When you see when the track starts to kind of deteriorate and get really dry, what you'll see is the wheels will kind of fishtail a little bit.
Yeah.
And that means they don't have good traction, and that means that turn is starting to deteriorate.
You saw with Chase Madsen, who I believe is the rider for Chi Alpha at the moment. I may be mistaken in that, but he was kind of taken off for a burn, almost lost control for a brief moment there. Slowed down as he was going through that turn.
Yeah, and what you'll see is teams will start to kind of coast through that turn because they don't have a lot of traction, and your initial instinct is, oh man, I need to kind of set my pedals, make sure that I'm still stable. So as you see teams start to coast the turns, that means they don't have a lot of traction. Things are getting really dusty. And the pace is still hot. There's been 36-second laps, like pretty consistently the last 3 or 4 laps.
Yeah.
This is a fast race so far.
Certainly has been a very high-intensity race. Not even 60 laps down, just past a quarter of the way through. And no one's really out of the race at the moment, which is a great thing to see.
Yeah, absolutely. You saw Bears go down early, but they're back on the pack. They're going to do an exchange.
Yeah.
It's awesome to see them get back in it. Looks like Sigma Phi Epsilon, SIGEP is also going to be doing an exchange.
Yeah, Bears utilized that SIGEP burn.
You guys can't see it on the broadcast, but there was just a big gust of wind. Another thing happened, and you saw the pack kind of swerve a little bit. So when you see that pack kind of swerve a little bit coming down the front stretch, that means there was probably a gust of wind, and that's going to be maybe a storyline later in the race.
Now we're seeing towards the front of the pack, I believe that is Andrew Laval, who has decided to migrate towards the beginning.
Yeah, you can see the pack right now. It's 6 riders wide. Things are just slowed down right there. Kind of that accordion effect when you see everything bunch up like this. Andrew Laval's on the front, but he's keeping a pretty slow pace, and you can kind of see it in his cadence. He's not moving too quickly right now. I think he's ready for somebody else to take the front. He's looking around, seeing which wheel he's going to follow.
And we're seeing a jet black burn has led to the pack stringing out immensely. Let's break down the top 10 as things stand. Jet black leading things off. Gray go in behind. Beta Sigma Psi, Delta Sigma Pi, and Sigma Phi Epsilon round out the top 5. Ghost Cycling, bit of a surprise. 27th qual position there in 6th. BKB in 7. Phi Kappa Psi in 8th. Phi Delta Theta in 9. And Phi Gamma Delta in 10th at the moment. But a lot of exchanges over there in the backstretch.
Yeah, what you saw was Phi Psi was in the front, and you had like 5-6 teams kind of swarm him and come around him because they didn't think he was maybe going quickly enough. It's kind of happening again. Some of the teams were exchanging, but you see this happen, and as a rider, you get a little bit nervous when teams swarm you like that. So it looks like he's kind of content to stay on the inside.
We're going to welcome in another special guest with our pit reporter, Gracie Barra.
I'm here with Mackenzie Holmes from Indiana Women's Basketball, and it's actually her first Little 500, her first year at IU. It got canceled with COVID last year, no fans, but you're here, and I know you're from Maine, so this is a little bit different. So what are your impressions?
I mean, I kind of came in with no expectations because I didn't really know what to expect, but obviously the atmosphere is great, and I'm having a lot of fun, so it's nice to finally get to be at a Little 5 because the last 2 years I haven't been able to.
Your dad's a big biking guy, and he's a little bit jealous. What did you get him as a present recently?
So for his birthday or Father's Day last year, I can't remember which one, we got him a Cutters shirt to use when he bikes, and I'm pretty sure he wears it all the time. So he's a little jealous that I'm here right now, and I think if he was here, he'd try to hop in the race. But yeah, he's excited that we're here and able to see this happen because he's a huge fan of the movie Breaking Away.
Now shifting away from biking, now to basketball, really excited about this upcoming season. You guys had awesome runs last year to the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 before. What are your expectations going into it?
Just keep growing, keep building off of the foundation that we've laid, and we keep adding pieces that are going to help us get to those goals, and I'm really excited to get to work with our new group this year.
And you were here today with your teammates. How awesome is it to be able to do things like this in the off season together?
It's great. It's a great opportunity to just hang out outside of basketball. And now that COVID is kind of taking a backseat, we're able to get out into the community and see different students and different faces. So it's been a lot of fun.
You got the Cutters shirt. Are you pulling for Cutters today, or are you just kind of happy with whoever wins?
Cutters is the only team I know, so go Cutters.
Thank you so much, Mackenzie.
I'm sure Charlie loved Mackenzie's choice of team, didn't you, Charlie?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, Cutter is the winningest team in history, but I do think it's awesome when teams see Breaking Away and make the connection. It is pretty cool. So during that interview, we saw Andrew Laval. He called out one of the teams that was lapped, and the team was kind of coming close to him, and he said, "Get out of the way. You can't be at the front of the pack. You're lapped." And then when he came from the start-finish line, he actually signaled to Chappie Blackwell, who waves the flags, and said, "Hey, get this guy out of here." Basically, I think really what it comes down to is he got crashed out last year. He doesn't want some of these teams that are lapped getting in his way and rooting his chances at winning. So he's basically saying, "Hey, if you're lapped, get off the front of the pack. You need to go to the back right now."
That takes an excellent amount of awareness to be able to understand that, all these teams around you, all these factors, and still be able to pull that off.
And Chappie Blackwell, listen, he just he's flying the blue flag with the orange stripe in it, which basically means, hey, if you're a lap team, go to the back. What you'll see is the judges of those teams will go to their pits and say, hey, you got to get out of the way. You can stay in the pack, but you need to kind of filter to the back and make sure that you're not jeopardizing anybody's race.
Well, we're seeing 3PH taking off with a bit of an interesting race so far. Injuries playing a huge factor in their season so far. Let's learn a little bit more about them leading into today's race.
Meet Little 500 rider Ben Baines. As one of the fastest riders currently at IU, Ben is respected by the entire field and even his teammates on Team 3PH.
He works really hard, whether it's in school or training for triathlons and stuff like that. He works pretty hard.
But despite his knowledge of the race and his skill set, Ben won't be riding in this year's Little 500. You see, if you're a casual rider of the bike like myself, there's not much risk involved, just a few scrapes. But if you ride in the Little 500 and train for it all year round, it's a little more dangerous. Just ask Ben Baines.
It's kind of just one of those things that if you're not super careful with taking care of all your stuff, then it can happen just like that.
Over spring break, Ben chose to spend time with his team training for this year's Little 500. However, while on a casual training ride, Ben's bike went forward. Down went Ben on his shoulder, quickly leading to a broken collarbone. And Ben knew his season had come to an end.
Once I realized that it was broken, it took a while to dawn on me that I wouldn't be in the race, but it just once it sunk in, it just kind of sucked.
When I found out, I was like, wait, what? And just kind of confused.
So Ben has found a new role. This year he'll be on the fence, serving as a student coach.
I've been trying to just talk guys through things, because I know after seeing the look on some of their faces, they were a little bit shocked once they found out. So kind of trying to put them at ease a little bit, and then also who else needs to be who needs a fire lit underneath them and who needs to be pushed a little bit farther.
It says a lot about his character, the way he's come to the track almost every day and taken on an even bigger role after the injury, kind of stepping into more of a coaching role and helping all of us grow as riders.
Whether it's on the track or just off of it, Ben Baines is still doing what Ben does best, leading his team.
Being able to just be there with the guys on race day is just going to be, I think it'll be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, back here, 70 laps down. Got a little bit of a note from my spotter, Griffin Epstein, that 18 teams on that lead lap, Charlie. That's more than half of the riders or the teams out here.
Yeah, I mean, that is a decent amount of teams. I am impressed with, the speed of the race is definitely faster than I've seen in the last couple of years. I'm seeing a lot of 35, 36, 37 second laps. I know in the last, even last year, a lot of 40, 41, 42s. Those are slower laps. So I do think the race is generally a little bit faster than it has been in the last few years. But, as I'm saying that right now, the riders are bunching up. They're slowing down a little bit again. But that's kind of how the race plays out, the according effect. The race stretches out and then kind of slows down, and when exchanges happens, might stretch out again. But it looks like Sig Ep, though, went to the front. It seems like teams at the front want it to stay fast. Anytime it bunches up like that, some team, whether it's Jet Black, Phi Delta Theta, Sigma Phi Epsilon, they go to the front and kind of stretch it out again.
Chi Alpha currently out in front, Sigma Phi Epsilon doing a lot of pulling for the pack, speeding things up a little bit as we see Chi Alpha begin to slide back in, try and get into that rotation up in the front of the race. Man, it's been a good 70 laps so far. Jack Edwards and Charlie Hammond in the broadcast booth. Griffin Gonzalez and Gracie Barr part of the crew as well down in the pits. Andrew Laval kind of taking an outside position.
Yeah, he's definitely sitting up a little bit. They're not going too quickly right now. Every lap around, Andrew seems to be communicating with his pit. He's definitely, you know, looking for something. And then any time a team burns, like he's immediately on it. I don't know if he's trying to kind of slingshot off one of these burns and make his move, and he just really hasn't had the opportunity yet, or what he's looking to do.
Well, Alpha Kappa Psi just did a burn, and we're seeing Grego prepare for one as well. And the pack itself is stringing out to kind of mark the Grego burn. So they haven't marked too many of the Grego burns so far, and as a matter of fact, Cutters are utilizing it to slingshot themselves as well. They're not going to do the exchange now. They're going to wait, as is Grego, both of them pushing themselves back in. Blackie Bulls, however, are also in a similar spot where they have that bike half in, half out, debating the exchange.
Yeah, you kind of have to go with the flow of the race. If the exchange isn't quite ready, you come out, is it ready yet or no? And so those teams will kind of go back to their pit and wait.
We're seeing another burn here by Cutters. They will try and make an exchange here. I believe that the team that is marking them is also going to try and make him an exchange, and that is
Signify. So yeah, you know, that's again those two teams kind of working together. I really am wondering if before the race they kind of got together and talked. They're constantly communicating, exchanging together, always kind of close to each other in the pack.
Jacob Kuhn now onto the bike for Cutters.
Looks like Phi Delta Theta is also kind of burning off the front, and they're also ready for an exchange, and they're going to do it alongside Grego. So this is, you know, a really close exchange with two pits that are right next to each other. Hopefully this will stay clean. Looks like Grego is going to stay out for one more lap.
But it is going to be an exchange done by Phi Delta Theta as well as Forrest, getting themselves back into it.
Looks like Blackie Bulls is exchanged as well. A little bit off the back. Gavin Goody just got on the bike, took the bike from Daniel Kang. He's going to have to do a little bit of work to get back on the pack, but I think he'll be okay.
Yeah, Andrew Murray getting onto the bike for Phi Delta Theta.
So one thing to notice, if you see a little bit of a sock coming out of Blackie Bull's back, that is a sock, and it has ice in it, actually. This is a thing that a lot of pro cyclists will do. They'll put ice cubes in a sock, and they'll put it behind their jersey in hot days like that. So that's what that is, and it's just keeping him cool.
I like that description. A sock-looking object is a sock.
It is a sock.
We have more sponsors to thank for today's race. Been a huge part of putting on today's contest. 75, 76 laps into today's race. And it's been a good one so far. High intensity, relatively clean compared to how we were kind of previewing it before the race.
Yeah, absolutely. All the crashes were, very isolated. Nobody got too injured, which is great to see. And I do think, part of that is because the pace has been a little bit hotter than it has been in the past. When the pace is faster, there's less risk, less opportunity to overlap wheels and stuff like that.
Grego out in front, Phi Kappa Psi following in behind. They were preparing for an exchange, but they decided not to. I believe that Laval kind of waved that one off. But he kind of did duck out wide to try and get into it, but ducked back inside into the pack towards the back end.
Yeah, I think this set for Andrew Laval has been kind of a, hey, let me get out there, let me get a vibe for the race. And it looks like down the backstretch, he's going to do an exchange this lap. Go ahead.
He is moving.
Yeah, he is moving.
Out into the front. They will be marking him tightly. I believe that's Fiji as well as Jet Black are marking him as they're preparing for an exchange. They're not going to give him any room to work with, and it's been clear for all of the exchanges for Phi Psi, they've not allowed much to go on at all. Getting onto the bike for Phi Psi will be Jack Warner.
Yeah, it looks like Jet Black is also going to do an exchange in turn 3 on the backstretch.
Kind of slingshotted in that instance, marking the burn, and now taking off for one of their own.
Yeah, Jet Black does a very good job at that.
They're going to wave it off. They're going to continue going, so they're going to try and push it even further on another lap, and they aren't being marked in comparison to other teams. Fiji is kind of trying to make an effort to get back into it, but out in front is Jet Black, and they're actually going to be able to kind of almost follow the drift of Evan Scholars, now getting inside of them.
Okay, I might be premature in saying this, but I do not see a rider or a bike in the Jet Black pit right now.
I think just
there is,
13,
okay.
Yeah,
so they are going to do an exchange. They are going to do an exchange. I was a little bit interested to see if they were going to do a couple extra laps.
Yeah. It appears that they will be going out for an exchange here on the far side.
Looks like we got Black Key Bulls on the front. Jet Black doing a great exchange, so they have plenty of time to fit themselves back into the pack.
Well, I cued Griffin last time about track conditions, and it was more so about the crowd. This time, actually about track conditions, back to Griffin down on the track.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. I think we're going to have to rename this the dreaded Turn 1 because it was a huge issue last year. And as you can see, according to Charlie, it's becoming a huge issue again. Slowly, this track is starting to slow off. And what you're seeing riders do is instead of accelerating on the bend, they're actually finding time to brake to avoid that fishtail Charlie was talking about just a little bit ago. And I am curious, I want to ask Charlie, how do you practice this in the months of training leading up to Little 5? Because it seems a lot of these guys had game plans for this.
Great question, Griffin. I think more than anything, you just test yourself going as fast as you can into these turns in every type of condition and understand what you have to do while you're going in that turn to make sure that you don't slide out. So whether that is coasting a little bit, you know, turning your bike a little bit, kind of taking the turn from wide and coming in, you definitely want to feel it out in all different types of track conditions. So it's really important to practice that throughout the entire spring.
We're seeing Beta Sigma Psi. They just went through the newly anointed by Griffin Gonzalez dreaded Turn 1. They're going through with about a quarter of a straightaway lead as they're doing a bit of a burn, preparing for an exchange.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. Turn 1 has definitely been a storyline for several races now. So hopefully it will, you know, stay up a little bit longer. We still have, you know, 120 laps for these 33 teams to be going through that turn. So it probably will just continue to deteriorate.
Michael Dubois getting onto the bike for Beta Sigma Psi. Poor exchange there. They blew through it. Interested if that's going to lead to anything. Charlie, I'd love some insight on that. For the exchanges, you go slightly over into the Team Beyond News pit. What kind of penalties, warnings kind of go when an exchange isn't done as well as it could be?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So during qualifications, if you cross the line at all, you know, you get flagged.
Yeah.
You have to go to your next attempt. But in the race, they're a little bit more lenient on it. So what happens is every pit has a judge on the infield watching their exchanges, making sure they do their 10 exchanges. And what will happen if they blow past the pit, they'll come over to them. They'll say, hey, you know, we're just giving you a warning. We're just going to let you know that you need to keep these a little bit tighter. They won't give them a penalty right away. They'll give them a few strikes. And eventually, if they continue to blow through the pit, then they'll give them that penalty.
We're seeing actually a bike issue here for Bears on the near side. They blew through it a little bit, and they actually had the mechanic run across and bring in a new bike. Getting on to it for Bears is Gabe Thomas.
And for viewers that haven't watched Little 500 in the past, and we've been talking about penalties a lot. So what happens is pre-race, there can be pre-race penalties or they can be in the race penalties. Pre-race penalties are when teams don't show up to certain meetings that they have to. So before the race, they have to do, say, a 2-second penalty within the first 20 laps of the race. And when the camera comes around the start-finish line, there's a box with an X through it. So they have to get off their bike, sit in that penalty box as long as they, you know, for however long the time is, and then they get back on their bike. So when teams like impede or they have bad exchanges, they could get in-race penalties that they have to slow down and do that for. So you definitely don't want that to happen because it can really hurt your chances of winning.
It's been a great race so far. Poor exchange there. Out on the far side. We're seeing Army Cycling struggling to get one going there. Back on the bike, though, and getting back into the pack.
It is great to see Army Cycling having a team in this race. Having a decent race so far. Yeah, we're going to get a replay of that crash.
Yeah, just kind of didn't get a great handle on it. Tripped himself up by the wheel. A tough one there. Cutter's taking the lead out in front now. I was about to make a note about how there were no teams in the current podium positions that were a single digit, but now with Cutter's taking the lead in the 3 spot in quals. They're going to concede it pretty quickly there, however. We are seeing a burn being attempted by Alpha Sigma Phi.
Yeah, it looks like we have Sigma Phi Epsilon on the front, again, with Phi Delta Theta on their wheel. We've seen a lot of them, both of those teams in the front, the teal team and the lighter blue team. And we got Jet Black coming through on the inside as well.
Yeah, we're seeing, after that exchange, Alpha Sigma Phi getting tight in, deciding to go for it. There is a bad exchange there. 2 teams going down. Involved in that one.
I think those teams might have just run into each other.
That was no exchange. Yeah, that's poor on my end. It was Ghost Cycling involved in that one. They kind of just came together. IUDM, the other team involved in that one. It happened near the pits, closer and further away from the inside of the track. Bit of an odd one. We're seeing Fiji beginning to pull in the lead lap.
Looks like
it was a big crash out in turn 3. Several teams going down. Bears, a second crash of the race already. Some teams who have been lapped, I believe, are involved in that one. Remaining to see if there's any other contenders. And Bears has a bike that I don't believe is operatable. Actually, as a matter of fact, they're going to get back onto it, but they're signaling to their crew that they need someone else to get on the bike.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to see Bears go down again. It looks like he's able to ride that bike. It looks like he turned his handlebars back straight, but that's another crash in that kind of turn 3 into turn 4 zone.
Yeah, another issue in that turn as Bears, a second crash already. Very unfortunate for them that they were unable to, or that had a second crash in the race. It wasn't in a case of unable to, but it's coming on the inside of CSF Cycling.
You know, the good thing with these crashes, we haven't seen the yellow flag flown yet, so it is good to see the teams be able to kind of get right back up, back onto their bikes. Means they're not too injured from that crash.
There have been several crashes, but none of them have been, you know, detrimental to the race enough for a yellow flag to be flown just yet.
Yeah, it's interesting because no yellow flags in yesterday's women's race so far. Lap 87, no yellow flags so far. It's definitely a bit different than we see most years, but it's awesome to see.
Yeah, and I think it was just the one crash at the start-finish line, if I'm not mistaken, yesterday, Charlie. It was a very clean women's race. We'll have more on details of that race later on in today's broadcast, so stick around for that. As we're seeing some exchanges, Forrest with a tough one there. It's almost a coming together between CSF and Forrest.
Yeah, it looks like we have all of our top teams at the front of the race right now. Grey Goat, Cutters, Phi Psi, Black Key Bulls, Phi Delta Theta.
And a CSF Cycling, a team that's currently out in front, working the way back to kind of get on a wheel inside that lead lap. But they're a team, you know, 17th. Didn't talk about them much at all, but they've kind of had trended upwards later on as we've gone further and further into today's race.
Yeah, absolutely. CSF has been, you know, really a big team over the last 10 years. They've always had a team each year. They've had some really good qualifications, finishes lately, so it's good to see them having a strong race so far.
Lead pack slowing down a bit. Fiji burning off to do an exchange for themselves.
Looks like they had a clean exchange.
Yeah. They take first place, allowing for their number 3 rider, Jake Herendine, to get onto the bike and with a decent lead ahead of the rest of the group.
Ooh, yeah, you see, so Black Key Bulls is during a burn right now. That's Gavin Goody. He's probably one of the most experienced riders in this track. And going through turn 1 into turn 2, his wheel really skidded out, and he had to correct it. So I do think that track is still starting to deteriorate. And it looks like Cutters is definitely marking Black Key Bulls. They're all going to do an exchange together, as well as Phi Psi. So we've got 4 of the top teams all exchanging right. Okay, some of the teams are going to stay out. Only Cutters ended up exchanging, but all of those teams have bikes on the track ready to go.
We're sending it back down trackside with Gracie Barra.
I'm here with President of the Steering Committee, Jeremy Kim, and we were talking a little bit about this, but you knew that you wanted to be involved with Little 500 from high school. How did you know that?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my really good friends from high school's older brother was vice president of steering committee, and we kind of sat down and had coffee, and he really stressed that IUSF was an amazing part of the IU community, and I kind of jumped in, and here I am.
And you've had a lot of trouble kind of throughout your college career with a canceled race, a race without fans. Tell me, Jeremy, how good does it feel to look out now and see all these fans and these teams on the track?
Oh, it feels amazing. The fans bring a special type of atmosphere to Bill Armstrong Stadium, and we're so glad to have them in full force.
So everybody's got suits on, but I think your outfit is a little bit more special than the rest. Can we get a look at these pants? Where did you get these from?
So this is tradition per IUSF. The president passes down these pants every single year, and these were actually owned by Bill Armstrong when he was here at IU.
Wow, so pretty awesome pants. How do they fit everybody every year?
I had to take about, I think, this much out of the pants when I went to the tailor, but I think they're purposely big so everyone can get them adjusted.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you, Sue.
Thanks for that, Grace. Back here going through the race we just seen now with Phi Psi taking a bit of a very big lead. Out in front, it's their number 1 rider. I believe Carson Etner is the man who is on the bike for them, as they're not necessarily going for an exchange. They're more so just kind of taking a large lead on the rest of the pack. They've snuck up and kind of taken a half straightaway lead now as they cross start-finish line.
Yeah, so this might be the big move that Phi Kappa Psi is going for. You know, their coach in the pit is telling them to keep it steady. Ooh, we got a crash.
A big one there. Somehow a leap by Evan Scholars over an IUDM rider, I believe, who is down and he's hurt.
I think this is going to be a yellow flag.
He's crawling off. The flags are prepared. He's in a lot of pain. IUDM with a crash there, and somehow Evan Scholars couldn't get around the guy. Opts instead to leap with his bike and gets over him.
I think we're going to see a replay. I think he might have just ran over his leg, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think that's why that rider's in so much pain right now.
I may have been offering him too much credit of a leap, and more so it was just pushing through it, and he's down. IUDM having to make an exchange over there.
Yeah, but
the yellow flag stayed down, though.
Yeah, the yellow flag stayed down. That rider was able to get off the track. But Phi Kappa Psi right now currently has almost a straightaway lead. And this is definitely a move. Their coach is in the pit telling them to keep it going. This is not their top rider in Andrew Laval, so this is one of their other riders, and I assume that they're going to try to get him on the bike as well, but this is definitely their first attack at, you know, lap 90.
Yeah. We're seeing Sigap as well, or they're actually burning for an exchange.
Yeah, so right now you see the field. They know that Phi Psi is off the front. Right now, Grego and Jake Richards is on the front trying to pull this back together. I know most of the field probably thought that this is what Phi Psi was going to do, so I think they're all talking together saying, hey, we need to get together and make sure that this doesn't get away.
You know, there needs to be a bit of communication there. We saw it yesterday in the race with Melanzana, where they kind of just took off, used some of their best rider, Grace Williams, to just utilize their speed and get out in front. I think it's Andrew Laval who's preparing himself to come into the race.
Yeah, so
he's showing up 2 fingers, so I think they're going 2 more laps.
Yeah, you can see Andrew commanding his teammate. He is so excited in the pit right now. He is cheering on. He's getting the crowd all fired up. I think he's trying to get on the bike and really extend this lead.
He's not going for subtlety with their move. He's letting them know he wants some energy as he gets onto the bike.
Absolutely. And so it's interesting, you look at the other teams, who do they have on the bike right now? So Jake Richards is Grey Goat's best rider. He's on the bike. He really needs to stay out there if they're going to shut this down, if Andrew's going to be on the bike. Looks like Black Key Bulls has Gavin Goody, who's their top rider. So they need to keep those strong riders out there to make sure that Andrew can't get away. The perfect storm for Phi Psi is not only do they have their best rider on the race, the rest of the teams that are their competitors have, maybe their 3rd or 4th rider so that they can really put a dent into the pack.
They have a 7-second lead, and they're going now for their final burn, if you could call it that. We've seen Laval throw up the 1 sign, 1 more lap. They're pulling away towards the front, trying to break away. Laval has a fresh bike preparing to come into the race.
Yeah, he is going to enter this race, and I think what we'll see is he's going to go immediately, continue to make this gap bigger. And I think he's going to probably be doing a pretty long set, because if you're going to try to, break away this early in the race, you're trying to lap the field, no question, because you're not going to just stay off the front for 100 laps.
Yeah, here is Andrew Laval. We've mentioned him numerous times on the race. This is his 2nd set so far, and he has a decent lead ahead of the rest of the lead pack. We're seeing them try and catch up and bring things back in. Beta Sigma side, Black Key Bulls and Phi Delta Theta. Cutters as well. The 5 teams, actually Cutters is making an exchange there. The teams that could try and keep up with Laval, who has shown no interest in getting in with the lead pack. He wants to keep this lead high.
Yeah, you see Black Key Bulls on the front right now, and Gavin Goody, he is definitely trying to shut this down immediately. You see Phi Delta Theta and SIGAP coming through saying, hey, we're going to help you get this, shut down. That straightaway lead is down. Yeah, I think they're going to catch him pretty soon here. But, it looks like Andrew Laval is content. What you'll see happen in these races is fresh legs can just go off the front. But I do think that they're going to catch him in this move, and Andrew is, he's a veteran rider. He said, okay, the move's done. We're going to stop. We're not going to burn any matches, when I don't have to. But he's
we're 100 laps into the race, starting off you there briefly, Charlie. But we've got a lot of action already through today's race so far, as Laval kind of taking the lead for Phi Psi. The pole sitters currently out in front halfway through the race.
Yeah, absolutely. What's interesting is, maybe...
We have some of the crashes from today's race again, starting off you there, Charlie. Yeah. But, it's been a very interesting back and forth race so far. We saw kind of a crash there that led to actually a bump on the far side after a poor exchange. Seeing again here, this is Black Key Bulls, if I'm not mistaken, who's making a strong exchange attempt. out in front. Faisai again breaking away with allowing Laval to get onto the bike.
So what you're seeing happening right now is, oh, we got more of these exchanges coming throughout the race. Another clean exchange between Black Key Bulls from earlier.
We have seen some pretty strong exchanges from some of the lead packs off your screen, but we're seeing again Black Key Bulls going for another exchange here on this near side. But Phi Delta Theta, Phi Kappa Psi, very close to one another. Sigma Phi Epsilon as well, part of that group who's out in front.
So truthfully, this is a huge move that we're watching right now. Phi Kappa Psi is off the front with Sig Ep and Phi Delta Theta. Black Key Bulls had Gavin, who shut down the attack, but he burned a few matches trying to get Andrew back. He did a lot of that work for the chase group to catch him back. So he ended up exchanging to Black Key Bulls' other strong rider in Logan Brown. They are a little bit down, but this is a big breakup right here. So maybe Andrew and Faisai's plan was not necessarily to break away right now, but to get this pack a little bit smaller. So you're seeing still Faisai, Sig Ep, and Phi Delta Theta on the front. Black Key Bulls chasing them down about, a half straightaway behind.
Let's do a full field reset, starting from the bottom on up. McNutt rounding us out in 33. Lambda Chi Alpha, 32. Phi Gamma Nu, 31. In the 30th position, Phi Sigma Kappa. 29, Army Cycling. Evan Scholars in 28th. Delta Upsilon had a crash earlier in the race there in 27th. Sigma Nu in 26th. Alpha Kappa Psi, 25. Sigma Chi in 24th. Team 25 sitting in spot 23. Wild Aces Cycling in 22. Novus Cycling in 21. Sigma Alpha Epsilon up in 20. IUDM Cycling in a decent 19 after a crash earlier. One below their qual position. Beta Theta Pi in 18th place. Bears in 17 after 2 crashes already. Delta Sigma Pi in 16, breaking us past the halfway mark. Alpha Sigma Phi in 15th, dead on their qual spot. 3PH Cycling up in 14th place. Ghost Cycling with a pretty impressive 13th place position so far. CSF Cycling another good race so far. Forest Cycling in 11th. Grey Goat in 10th. Jet Black 9th. Chi Alpha in 8th. Phi Gamma Delta in 7th. Cutters 6th. Beta Sigma Psi in 5th. Black Key Bulls in 4th. Phi Kappa Psi in 3rd. And Phi Delta Theta in 2nd. On top, Sigma Phi Epsilon as things stand. Word of sponsors as well. 105 laps into the race, helping us put on a very good product so far. A race that's been offering quite a bit in terms of entertainment, with the leaders offering a very good duel so far for the championship sponsors. Want to welcome in our first guest up in the broadcast booth, Tom Miller here, the director of One Day in April. Tom, I want to kind of just get your perspective. What got you into racing? Kind of what made you kind of decide, Little 5, I want to do something on this?
I mean, I think it's not like anything else. When you're at IU, there's something so special about the race and about the way that it, it's just pure competition. Nobody's doing this for a contract or because there's a future in professional cycling. It's just you're out there because you want to do it, and you want to do it with the folks that you've chosen to ride with. And it was just really inspiring. And, as a fan, it was just really cool, and I think I wanted to preserve the experience that I had observing it close up in a way that I felt like it hadn't been done before.
Yeah, as a former rider, first off, I can't thank you enough for putting on that documentary. It really does show something that's so hard to describe when you're just talking to someone, showing the preparation that those teams go through throughout the year, how much they really care about this race. It's just truly incredible. So first off, thank you so much for showing that to viewers that might not totally understand the experience. But I have to know, what was it like, getting those camera shots, being so close with the teams that you followed? Like, what was it like to kind of get to know them?
Yeah, we were very fortunate that the teams, Teeter, DG, Cutters, and Delta Tau Delta were so bought into the concept. At first, when we approached them, I think they were a little bit like, cameras in our planning meetings and our strategy, I don't know about that. But as we went on, I think everybody understood that what we were trying to do was help explain, like, you see the race, but there's 364 days that go up to that are not, a stadium full of people. It's rides out on 446 when it's snowing, and what that means and what that feels like. And it was really special. I don't think too many folks have had the privilege to see it the way that I have across a couple different teams in a really intimate way. And was really, really happy to be able to share that with a bigger audience.
You mentioned seeing that in a very intimate way. How did that transform kind of how you viewed the race kind of before in the beginning stages of planning it versus where you have the final finished product?
Yeah, when I started, my experience with the race had been at the IDS as a photographer, and so it was, it was a bit like a big game day for us too, because I really, very competitive, wanted to get the big photo on the paper and things like that. So I thought about it as the race, but man, when I spent time with those teams, I really realized just how much more was going on, what was driving folks to commit this much to the race. I mean, certainly it's a cool event, period, but I learned so much about all the inner reasons why these folks on these different teams chose to commit so much of their college experience to an athletic event that could be kind of hard to explain outside of the community, and it really changed how I thought, what I thought a meaningful experience as a little 5 rider could be. I think I was a little reductive in that I thought it was like, man, if you're not gonna win, like that's a lot of work to come in 20th place or whatever. But I learned so much, and it's really understood why, whether you're first or 33rd, that journey is just so meaningful to folks.
Yeah. And in terms of, Charlie mentioned it, as a former rider who it made a big impact on, you made an impact on the community. What does that mean to you to be able to have made an impact on future generations of students, of alumni, parents, who can now consume Little 5 in a very different way?
I mean, it's really cool. I think when we were in the middle of it, we were unsure of our own abilities. Most of us were students. I had just graduated, but a huge number of people who worked on the project were juniors, seniors, whatever. And so there were kind of like, there were a bunch of kids making a movie, and like, is this even going to be anything? So that it's cool in that regard. But I do feel like the energy around the race is really positive. I think there's kind of, not just myself, but other folks from the last 10 or 15 years or so kind of like recommitting to making sure that the race has a legacy that goes on for a much longer period of time. And I think to be a small part of that is just awesome, and it's great to hear,
Well, thank you very much for the time, Tom. Enjoy the rest of the race and appreciate all the work that you've done here with Little 500.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much.
So let's break down the top 3 as things stand. Phi Delta Theta currently out in front, burning out with an exchange happening right now as things stand. Sigma Phi Epsilon in second place, Phi Kappa Psi as well, kind of in the 2 group that is now trying to catch up with Phi Delta after a very successful burn out in the front of the pack. There was a crash, as a matter of fact, that we missed kind of in the interview there with
Black Key Bulls and Jet Black.
Black Key Bulls and Jet Black, 2 of the contenders out in that turn 3, both going down, both trying to recover. Jet Black up into 9th, Black Key Bulls in 10th. They're both about 17 seconds off the leader, so nowhere close to out of the race, but definitely a setback with the crash.
Yeah, it looks like that Jet Black, Black Key Bulls, they're about a half lap down from the leaders. It looks like they're still contenders of Phi Kappa Psi, Sig Ep, and Chi Alpha and Buddy Sigma Psi up at that front pack. Looks like Grey Goat's a little bit behind them in the pack with Fiji and Cutters and Bears. And it looks like Black Key Bulls, their goal right now is to try to get to the end of that pack with Cutters so that they can work together to get back in this bike race.
Yeah, we're seeing Chi Alpha currently in 4th as well, kind of part of that tall group up top. Phi Del pulling, Phi Psi right in behind them. They're passing on the outside another rider. But it is interesting here. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we're seeing Chase Madsen go for a burn. They're preparing for an exchange. We see a look pass over the shoulder from Phi Delta, seeing if they're going to try and chase or mark Madsen, should I say, but they're not, and Chi Alpha is going to be allowed to pull themselves out into the front of the race.
Yeah, it looks like Phi Delta Theta and Phi Psi are in the front right now. I think their pace definitely slowed down a little bit. You see a little bit of coasting for Sig Ep behind them. So I think the pace definitely slowed down, which is great for these teams that are trying to chase. And Cutters right now, Fiji, Jet Black, Black Key Bulls, Grey Goat, Bears. There's a lot of teams that are trying to get back to this front. But as I say that, you see Andrew Aval kind of get back on the front, giving a thumbs up to his pit. And, he feels good. I think he wants to stay out for a while.
We're seeing Jazz Briggs get on the bike again. He missed last year's race due to a collarbone injury. And we're seeing kind of shadowing in behind. is Andrew Laval. So no move, really kind of. We saw an attempted move by Faisai, potentially. We're again predicting upon what it was expected.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got that, that front pack. Andrew and Faisai, he's managing the pack really well. But all those teams, I think, you've had a lot of the top contenders go down, and they want to, get those contenders out of the race, so there's less teams for them to beat. So they might want to keep the pace a little bit hot so that those teams can't catch back on.
We're seeing Faisai preparing for an exchange. Laval again signaling that a team that has been lapped, was forcing them to kind of weave around them, signaling to the official. Now we're seeing a small burn, I believe, for Andrew Laval. He's edging towards the front of the pack, maybe preparing for a move, but there's little chance that anyone's going to let him do that. We're actually seeing 3 changes readied on this near side.
Looks like all of this front pack is going to exchange. Sigap is exchanging, but it looks like Andrew Laval and Faisai is going to stay out on the track. But it looks like
his helmet.
Yeah, he's having his helmet. That means he's got one more lap to go. He's going to exchange on the next lap.
We did see Sigap exchange. Blackie Bulls and Faisai are preparing for a move. We're actually seeing Laval kind of duck back inside to the pack. Could you ever use a tap on the head, Charlie, to almost fake an exchange there?
Yeah, there's definitely teams that will fake exchanges. The Faisai rider is definitely out in the pit. It looks like Blackie Bulls is going to try to exchange as well as Fiji. But that is an element of this race. Like you said, he's not coming out right now, so he might have been a little bit of a fake out.
We're seeing actually after the exchange for Fiji, tough fall.
Yeah, so most of that, front pack has come together. Cutters are kind of right back in the pack. We still have Grey Goat and Black Key Bulls. You can't really see them on the camera yet. They're about a half straightaway behind, but they're working together to try to get back on this pack, so hopefully they'll get back in the race. And the front pack is slowing down a little bit. I think Faisai might be coming in for exchange, but you never know with Andrew. He always just wants to stay out, so we'll see if he ends up actually exchanging. It looks like he is going to.
Yeah, we're seeing Faisai move into an exchange here. Team sitting on the pole. Well, Melanzana winning last year's race. We have Abby T joining us now in the broadcast booth. Abby, well, congratulations yesterday on the victory. It's been a day, less a day since you last won. What's it been like since the victory yesterday?
It's been crazy. So much fun. We've had so much time with our friends and family and all of our alumni and all of the people who came to support us. It's been amazing.
And in terms of the strategy for last year's race, kind of walk me through how you kind of foresaw the race heading into it and how it kind of panned out during the race.
The race this year went exactly according to plan. That was what we were trying to do, and it was lucky I followed a good burn and set Grace up to go, and she did what she was supposed to do.
That's awesome. I was talking to one of your alumni, Katie Reynolds, yesterday, and I heard that it's your 10th year as a team, and you finally got your first win. What does that mean?
It means that we got to go out and do it for all the people that set us up to be here, and we couldn't be more grateful, and we're just happy to be on the team.
And seeing this crowd, obviously huge one for the men's race, huge one for the women's race yesterday. What does that mean to kind of have the community all watching the day where all your work culminates?
It's amazing to have the community here. It's exciting to have everyone back post-COVID and to have fans again. And, this year was kind of a pivotal year after the race. Not having fans, oh goodness, last year.
A massive crash out in turn 4. A bump there, a yellow flag almost certain. We're seeing some teams signal that they'll try and take off for a burn, but a yellow flag is flying, so team's gonna have to keep their distance from the leader. We'll update you when we can.
Yeah, there's some riders that really can't get off the track right now. You don't want to see that, but I think the yellow flag might be flying for a little while.
Forrest, the last biker to get off of the track. We're going to try and recap what just happened. Kind of come out of left field there. Charlie Moffitt, one of the riders down. Worst for Forrest after that crash. We're seeing it happen here. It's just a chain effect. We're seeing Grey Goat just barely escape as one of the last teams. Some teams having to go onto the middle of the track, practically, to stay on their feet. 2 on CSF also down. Yellow flag still up.
Yeah, it looks like those riders in a lot of pain. I really hope they're going to be okay, but they're they're weighing in the infield. It was good to see some of those teams you saw them go into the grass to avoid that crash. Those are experienced riders that, have the good bike handling and be like, I need to get out of this, and, their exit was to go into the grass.
Well, so we're here back with Melanzana. Again, introduce yourself, please.
Oh my God. Okay. My name's Abby Green.
And so, Abby, now it's been about a day since you guys won the race. What's it been like?
It's been crazy. It's been a whirlwind just with everybody that we love and care about coming down here. It's been really fun.
And in terms of, a race, a lot of it comes down to luck, avoiding things like that.
Yeah.
Kind of when you see how yesterday panned out, your planning versus what executed, kind of how did you view that?
Yeah, I mean, we planned and we strategized as much as the next person, but it's rare that things actually go according to plan, and I know a lot of it comes down to luck, and I guess luck was just on our side yesterday, but I mean, we worked really, really hard to get to where we were and to accomplish what we did, so I couldn't have asked for a better team.
Yeah, I have to ask, so I mean, you guys obviously lapped the field, but then you wanted to go for another lap.
Yeah.
What was the thought? Were you just trying to kind of stay out of the riskiness of the pack? Or you were like, you know what, we still feel good, let's just keep this thing going?
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit of both. I mean, it's risky, as we just saw with crashes. You can work really hard to make that big lead, but it can all be a race really quickly. And I think part of us just wanted to see what we could do and kind of make our mark in history.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I can confidently say that's probably the largest margin of victory in any women's race ever. So, I mean, it was truly a sight to see. I've never seen a performance like that.
And in terms of, the last few laps, when it's almost not a guarantee on the side, you still have to finish the race. What are the emotions around lap 95, getting towards the back end, when it's almost an insurmountable lead as long as you just keep going around the track?
Yeah, no, I rode laps 90 to 95 and then handed it off to our captain, Abby, and that was definitely an emotional couple laps, just watching her finish and just knowing how much she's contributed to the program and just how she leads us all through everything, and she's there for all of us emotionally on and off the track. I wouldn't have wanted anyone else to finish it for us.
Well, congratulations on the win yesterday.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
the rest of today's
Thank
race.
you, guys.
Thank you for coming out to the broadcast.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, congrats again.
So back down onto the action on the track. Sigma Phi Epsilon, the team currently out in front. Unfortunately, so after having to come out after a tough crash out in turn 4, we're now currently on lap 126. We have Griffin down on the track who has a bit more insight.
Yeah, guys, I'm right outside Alpha Sig's pit, I should say. They were largely involved in that, and you hear the boos in the background. They're booing Phi Delt. They feel that they caused the crash, and now they're heavily behind, and they just feel it was not ideal at all. They are not happy. They're going to boo Phi Delt for the remainder of the race. A lot of unhappy Alpha Sig fans here.
Saw an awkward moment between Phi Delta Theta and Beta Sigma Psi where they were trying to have an exchange for Sigma Psi, at least was, but we almost saw them kind of swerve into the exchange. A bit of a chaotic last few moments, hasn't it been, Charlie?
Yeah, honestly, this excitement between lap 100 and 125, it doesn't happen very often. All of this was kickstarted with Phi Psi's, kind of attack. Some of the teams got off the front. SIGAP and Phi Delta Theta and Phi Kappa Psi working together, and you had some teams, some of the contenders like Black Key Bulls and Grey Goat and Cutters off the back, but now everything's back together. The crash has kind of resolved itself, and I think most of the contenders are here back in the race again.
Let's get some more word from our sponsors for today's race. It's been a very interesting one so far, to say the least. Phi Psi currently out in front, but we're seeing some of the qualifying sponsors of today's race. Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Avenue, Coca-Cola, Consolidated, LogosExpress.com, another big sponsor for today's race. The qualifying sponsors play a huge part in allowing this race to go on. We're seeing the front pack, Phi Psi conceding their lead a little bit, allowing Grey Goat to take a bit of an edge. Grey Goat beginning to burn out into turn 1, potentially. They are actually preparing an exchange down low.
Yeah, it looks like we might get an exchange from Phi Delta Theta, Grey Goat, and potentially SIGAP and Black Key Bulls as well.
We have seen that a lot, Charlie. Is that a usual thing when you have almost a chain reaction between teams when they're exchanging in very similar moments?
Especially right now, a lot of these riders have been out on the track for a long time dealing with all the chaos that just happened. There was, the breakaway where teams had to stay on so they didn't exchange and get further down, and then there was the crash in the yellow. So I think these riders are they're pretty tired right now. They just want to get off the bike.
We've seen exchanges for BKB and Grey Goat. Grey Goat having to kind of concede a bit of space, trying to get into the track. High Alpha also preparing for an exchange. out in the front of the pack is their rider who's going for a burn. Jet Black riding that wave. We're also seeing pulling through on the inside, I believe it's Phi Delt, who is going to use their momentum on the inside. But an exchange prepared for Chi Alpha. They're going to make it.
And the crowd is really getting into it now. There's a lot of people screaming and yelling, and the energy in the stadium right now is electric. Yeah, it looks like that Phi Delta Theta rider getting off the bike. Man, he's tired. He was out there for a long time. It's hard, hard for him to walk. That was a big set from him. So, congrats Phi Delta Theta for making sure that you guys stayed in the bike race.
And Chi Alpha back towards the front of the pack.
So I'm curious to see, with all that chaos, I think teams are, this is a big time to take advantage of that chaos. Teams kind of want to sit back a little bit and, kind of relax after everything that just happened. This would be the time to go. I'm curious to see if any of these teams will realize that and make a big move.
We're seeing Trent Hohenstrider, actually, as a matter of fact, is kind of utilizing that. He definitely used the burn of a few teams to go on one of himself. He's got a huge lead out in front at the moment. He's going to be able to do an exchange in that far corner from our vantage point. We're going to toss it down to Gracie Barra, who's trackside with more.
Yeah, I just spoke with Casey DeLyden's family, and he's the Ghost Rider that crashed there on turn 4, and he was the only one in that wreck that had to be taken to the med tent, and his family came out onto the infield, and they're waiting outside of the tent right now, and I spoke with them, and they're really hoping he's okay and can't go into the tent right now, but he gave him a thumbs up from the bed, so they're hoping that things are good.
Thanks for that update, Grace. Definitely a tough crash to watch in turn 4. Currently out in front, Cutters have a bit of a just under a second lead over Sigma Phi Epsilon. They appear to be trying to pull with a bit of a distance between themselves and Chi Alpha, the current number 2 rider.
Yeah, it's interesting to see if Cutters is making a little bit of a move right now or if they're going to exchange. I don't see a rider in their pit, but I mean, this would be the time to go if you're going to try to lap the field, but take advantage of all of that chaos. Yeah, it looks like Torn from Cutters is opting to stay out on the track. They don't have any intention of exchanging right now. And it looks like their pit coach, Jason Fowler, is telling him, giving him a thumbs up and say, hey, you're doing great, keep it up.
Yeah, Cutters currently about a second ahead of Beta Sigma Psi. A very tight gap between them and Phi Gamma Delta, about a quarter of a second. And then Jet Black, 4 seconds off the leaders in fourth place. Chi Alpha, very similar time as well, in 5th place. So a bit of an edge at the moment, but we're also seeing Beta Sigma Psi get right onto the wheel of Cutters, who aren't going for an exchange. They're more so trying to maybe potentially take a bit of a lead. Phi Psi as well, making a move towards the back. They're moved up into 3rd place.
Wow, look at this. Cutters and Beta Sigma Psi are off the front again. Beta Sigma Psi is having a fantastic race today. They've been in pretty much every move that has happened so far. And I think Cutters and Beta Sigma Psi are opting to say, hey, this is an attack. We're gonna commit to this a little bit. I don't see either one of them having a rider in the pit ready to exchange. This is another attack. There's been a lot of fireworks in the last 40 laps. You don't see it like this. Lap 90 to 130, it's normally, pretty light. So
in our pre-race prep, Charlie, we were saying, what if, between those exact laps you mentioned, it gets a little slow, gets a little, drags on. It has not dragged on. It has flown right through. We're in the back 65 laps. When is too early, too late for teams, we talk about specific teams, to make a move to try and really kind of make an impact on the race?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say anything before lap 175 or so, if you're making a big move, then you either better have some team to do it with you or you're trying to lap the field. But you will see after lap, maybe in the 160s, there's normally a little bit early, but in the 170s, that's when teams are going to try to make a big move. They're not necessarily trying to break away and lap. They're just trying to break away and stay, say, 10, 12 seconds up on the field. So I'm curious to see if any big moves happen before then, because if so, that's kind of like, hey, we're going to try to put a lap up on the field, because it would be very difficult to just stay up for 60 laps.
Cutters, Beta Sigma Psi keep trading off that 1-2 spot. I believe it's Bears, as a matter of fact, who is kind of using their momentum to kind of carry himself on, draft a little bit. But Bears not in that lead pack. They're a bit of a ways behind after some crashes. Well, in the Beta Sigma Psi pit, they've had a good race so far, currently in 2nd. After qualifying in 10, more on that with Griffin Gonzalez.
Thanks, guys. Down here with Nate. Nate, we interviewed you last year when Beta Sig was surprising everybody. This year we're in the same boat. What have you seen so far? How have you guys been able to take advantage of this race?
Honestly, I think the heat plays a big factor. It's been pretty cold all spring season, and make sure we stay hydrated, lots of caffeine, lots of Gatorade, just like last year. But honestly, it's these boys. They put on the work all year, and they're really putting it show. Had a couple that big crash over there, had to come back a little bit, but we're doing really, really well.
You got 63 laps to go here. How do you maintain that front pace? You got to get exchanges in. You're going to drop. You're going to move up. How do you maintain that positive momentum?
Yeah. So we try and look for the lulls in the pace, and we kind of go and pick our exchanges at that point, and that's how we want to try and keep going the next 63 laps, and then just see what happens towards the end.
Now, Nate, you left this team last year, but you were one of the guys who brought Beta Sig cycling back and made it what it is right now. I don't want to jinx it, but what would a top finish mean for you and this team?
Honestly, what happens in the race happens in the race, and if we do really well, I'm going to be so proud of the boys no matter what. They put all the hard work in, but, me, Trent, and Noop, and my guy Johnny watching from Florida, we put in some really good work, and we're glad to see them continue it on. So.
Hey, they're cheering on Beta Sig. They're at 2, trying to finish 1. Guys, back to you.
Beta Sig just making an exchange right there.
You got a little crash in the pit with SAE, just an exchange crash. I think they're okay. But this gap between right now Cutters, it was Beta Sigma Psi and Cutters, but Beta Sigma Psi ended up exchanging. Cutters almost has, it's nearing a half lap. It's not quite a half lap on the field. Like I said before, the time that they're going right now, this is actually a really good tactical decision in the sense that there was a lot of chaos. That people wanted to hang out and chill after that chaos, and then Cutter said, all right, now we're going. So this is a legitimate move. They've had their top rider Torn on the bike for a long, long time.
Yeah, Torn, sorry not to be there, Charlie, but Torn does cross the finish line about 1 1/3 second, 1.3 seconds, I should say, behind him is Beta Sigma Psi. And then Grey Goat was the team that was in third at the last calculation. It will be Sigma Phi Epsilon who crossed the line next. Waiting for the update on their time. They are 16 seconds behind Cutters out in front. With their best rider on the bike, they have a good chance to really try and take a big, big lead.
This is a huge set from Torn right now. He's been consistently throwing down 35 to 36 second laps. Those are fast laps, especially for somebody to continue to churn through them. This is a really, really big move.
So it's Cutters and Beta Sigma Psi who are the 2 teams out in front. Beta Sigma Psi currently riding the wheel of Cutters.
Yeah, it looks like 2 of the top teams, Grey Goat and Black Key Bulls, are going to exchange together, as well as Phi Delta Theta. Thankfully, all those exchanges were decently clean.
That was an odd exchange for Grey Goat. He blew past him. His guy didn't go.
Yeah,
and then there was an exchange from Phi Delta as well.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit of confusion of teams exchanging together.
There's a burn here for Phi Kappa Psi. They're trying to get Andrew Laval back on the bike. They are a ways behind the current leaders. They're 13 seconds off, but this burn might bring them a little bit closer. They're going to try and bring in Laval. Laval yelling, I think, at the leading 2 teams. Don't know what he'd be saying beyond maybe you're very far ahead, slow down, please.
Yeah, so like you said, Andrew Laval getting back on the bike. I think he's going to try to connect with this chase group of Jet Black, SIGAP, Fiji. We've got Black Key Bulls and Phi Delta Theta kind of coming up on them as well. And I think hopefully they'll come together and talk to each other if they want to have a chance in this race and say, hey, we need to shut this down.
Alex, Cora, chants coming from the crowd.
Well, I'm still very impressed with Beta Sigma Psi in this race. They are going toe-to-toe with Cutters, having great laps right now.
It's Cora and Cray Maher on the bikes in the lead group. Some exchanges coming in for Phi Delta and SIGAP, I should say, as well as Chi Alpha.
And it looks like Jet Black is exchanging on the backstretch as well.
I guess trying to get a lot of are they getting fresh riders on, trying to chase down these lead 2 teams? Is that the mentality there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think all these teams are just trying to get fresh riders on so that they can shut down this gap. Jet Black having a great race right now. They're a little bit off the front. They're going to slot back into this kind of chase pack of Black Key Bulls, Grey Goat, Phi Delta Theta, Phi Psi, all those teams that are trying to shut this Cutters lead down, as well as Beta Sigma Psi. So like Jet Black right now is kind of coming across the start finish line. It's a little bit more than a straightaway lead, but what we're seeing right now is Cutters is going to exchange. So this lead is going to slow down a little bit, and I'll be curious to see if the teams will see that happen and really shut it down immediately.
We're seeing a very exaggerated beating to the head by Alex Cora. He wants to come out as well. They're preparing for an exchange. They'll let Forrest get out safely. But coming on will be Paul Smith for Beta Sigma Psi. Actually, Cora is going to keep going for one more lap, but he wants someone prepared to come on. Exchange coming in for Cutters. Coming on for Craig Maher is John Nicholson. Now Cora going for a burn.
Yeah, so that was a really great exchange from Cutters. I think they're a little bit further up than I expected them to be after that exchange. So good job for them to keep this lead even with an exchange.
We're seeing in the lead pack, part 2, it's being led by Laval. An exchange coming in for the surprise, it has to be said, Beta Sigma Psi. They're coming out of the bike. Cutter's not going to give them any room to maneuver. They take, or maintain first place, I should say. Beta Sigma Psi catching up now after their exchange.
So what will be interesting to see is how long Cutters commits to this if it doesn't continue to go forward, because basically they're burning a ton of matches right now, and this could, you know, maybe save those for a later in the race attack. So I'm curious to see if they continue to extend this and continue to commit to this move, or if at some point they're going to pull the plug on it and say, hey, like, let's rest our legs for the end of the race.
And in terms of the race jargon, Charlie, burning matches, is that kind of changing how you do things? That just using a lot of energy?
Yeah, so we kind of say, like, at the start of the race, you have a box of matches. Anytime you do a burn, you burn a match. You know, you're using a lot of energy. It's basically just like an energy storage idea. Anytime you do something that's, you know, difficult, you know, a little bit harder than like just a maintaining pace, you're burning matches. And basically at the end of the race, you just want to make sure you have enough matches to, you know, make a big attack and win the race.
We saw Beta Sig mention the heat is a big factor, that they've had a good race so far, currently in second. For more on that, we have Griffin Gonzalez on the track.
Guys, you know, one of my favorite things to do before every Little 500 is go coach to coach and ask what they think of the track, the conditions, the weather, so on and so forth. And I asked everyone, is the wind going to be the biggest factor today? And you want to know what most of them said? No. We'll take the wind. It's the heat we're really worried about. They said our guys have not trained in this kind of heat so far this season, as all their practices have been held in 40, 50, 60-degree weather at its warmest. Today being 80 feels like 80 plus when this wind dies down here. It really is getting guys. Every time a rider gets off the bike, whether it be on one of the top teams or the bottoms, they are falling to the ground sometimes as they are just absolutely gassed. So if you want to know what's going to happen in the next 52 laps and how this race is going to be decided, I'll tell you what, look no further than the fatigue of some of these guys.
Kuhn struggled, and thanks for that, Griffin, I should have mentioned that. A bit of a struggle there for Kuhn getting on the bike, but he's taking off. He's going for a very strong lead towards the front. We'll get some margins here. Cutters out in front, Phi Kappa Psi in second, 1.8 seconds behind. 2 seconds behind is Beta Sigma Psi. Phi Delta Theta in fourth, 2 seconds off. Jet Black 2 1/3 seconds off in fifth place, and just behind them Black Key Bulls, Sigma Phi Epsilon, kind of making up a group that's really condensified a lot in the last few moments.
Yeah, so it looks like they just shut down that Cutters breakaway. All the teams are kind of back together.
We'll bring up some more sponsors. Appreciative of what has been a fantastic race, gearing up for the final quarter of it. The group has condensified at the front. Jet Black out in front now for the championship sponsors. Numerous teams still in with a great shot of a championship, all within 2 seconds. There are 8 teams within 2 seconds of the leader. That's including the leader as well.
That's awesome. We just hit the 150 mark, so this is like the state. I mean, we've had a lot of fireworks, a lot more than I expected between lap 90 and 150 now, but now we're going to start getting more. When we start getting to like 160, 170, that's when a lot more teams are going to try to break away.
Is that inexperience? What's kind of the factor for the fireworks and a lot of the drama that's led up to this point, or is it kind of strategy from teams being different than years past?
I think it was a little bit of that. You know, obviously the crashes had a part to play, and I think everybody thought that Phi Psi was going to make a big move early on, and that's really what started the fireworks. You know, around lap 90. But you know, the crashes happened, things got chaotic, and Cutters, you know, tried to take advantage of that chaos and go at a good time. And I think they did a good job managing that. They had a big lead, but at some point decide, hey, like let's go back to the pack. Let's rest up for the last 50 laps.
So we're seeing An exchange out for 3PH out on the far side as all the leaders come through that back stretch. Out in front, Beta Sigma Psi. Right behind them, Phi Delta Theta, Jet Black, Cutters. Part of a really, really entertaining race so far.
Yeah, this has been one of the most interesting races I've seen in a long time. You got the leaders, it kind of looks like everybody's kind of coming together. This is where teams, maybe there's going to be another attack, but if I had to guess, teams might, kind of try to get together. And as I'm saying that, Andrew Laval's going straight to the front. But this might be the time when teams kind of like, hey, we got 48 laps left. We don't want to make another move for another 20. So things might get a little bit of a lull, but we'll see.
So joining us now in the broadcast booth, my good friend, yesterday's play-by-play broadcaster, Griffin Epstein. Griffin, it's been a day since you called the race. You weren't one of the champions like Melanzana just a moment ago, but, your first experiences calling Little 500.
It's been an absolute blast. This is just such an incredible event. The crowds both days have been electric. This race has just been absolutely thrilling throughout. And yesterday, it was just such an incredible performance by Melanzana, led by Grace Williams. I think one of the all-time dominant performances we've ever seen in the women's Little 5 race.
Yeah, in terms, you couldn't have, I guess, two different races, because this race, you've seen a lot more teams going back and forth versus yesterday. It was Melanzana from the get-go, kind of from your perspective. When did you realize, this is Melanzana just almost with a victory?
Well, we saw Grace Williams make a move in the 25th lap or so, about the same time that DG did it in 2021 in the women's race. And they just slowly etched ahead. They had their younger riders on the bike as well. They didn't rely on Grace Williams. And then Grace Williams came back on the bike in the 60th lap and finished lapping the field, got a lap and a fourth lead, and then it was over. And I think one of the differences I've seen today, I'm no race expert, but we've seen the pack work together in this men's race to chase after when someone's tried to break away. We didn't see that yesterday. Teams were not willing to work together. The pack got really spread out. It was really just Theta and Akayo in the last 40 or so laps that were even in the chase pack, and they were so quickly so far behind. They really never had any chance to catch Melanzana, and Melanzana also had by far the best rider in the race in Grace Williams, and they worked so well together.
Yeah, you've also been doubling as my spotter here today. You kind of hit on it, but what have you seen so far today that's been interesting to you of note, 155 laps into the race?
Yeah, I think it's been the packs working together. It's been a pretty clean race. We saw that one crash, but outside of that, it's been clean. It's been safe. I think it's a lot of teams probably love the position they're in right now with 40 laps to go. And, you always want a sprint finish, and this feels like it's set up for it. I think we got 10, 12 teams right now that are very much on this last lap. Maybe it comes down to who has the best sprinter. It's going to be really exciting.
Griffin, you said you're not a race expert. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Who are you taking as your potential winner for today's race? You got to put money on it. Who are you going for?
I think Phi Psi has ran a really good race. I think they're exactly where they want to be. They have Andrew Laval. It's been, heartbreak after heartbreak for them the last couple years. I'm wondering if this is maybe the year, and in his senior year, Phi Psi comes through the pole sitter and wins the Little 5. So I'm not a betting man, but if I had to, I guess I'd go with Phi Psi. But this is still anyone's race.
Well, Griffin, I'll let you return to my job of being my spotter. Good work yesterday. Enjoy the rest of today's race.
And good job too, Jack. I've enjoyed listening to you.
Thank you very much, Griffin. You're too kind. Well, we are 156 laps through today's race. It's been a good one so far. And Charlie, I asked Griffin, he's admitted not necessarily a race expert. Much more expertise for you. Who's best positioned right now?
Yeah, honestly, Griffin had a really, really great observation that yesterday a lot of teams didn't cover these attacks, but today every team is willing to do that. I think all of the contenders are still in this race. Look at Phi Psi, you look at Phi Delta Theta, Cutters, Wacky Bowls. All of those teams are still in the pack, and this is going to be a really, really exciting last 43 laps. As all these teams, want to make a big move. So I'm really curious to see kind of who is the first one to take that punch, and if that's the punch that wins the race, or if it's more of the counter punch that does.
An interesting thing to note is Chi Alpha is remarkably out in front of the rest of this group. The pack here is a good ways. I mean, we're looking at nearing on half a lap ahead for Chi Alpha.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Chi Alpha is a little bit, about a half lap up. They're making a really, really big attack right now. And honestly, I'm wondering if the pack doesn't realize that they're up.
Well, let's hear from another pack, from another team in the pack. It's Jet Black. We have Grace Ibarra in their pit.
Go to go.io/food to donate your items today. Thanks to all the Little 500 fans for your support.
Anthony, you guys have been in the top 10 the entire race. What's your strategy moving forward through the rest of the race?
Well, we went about a half lap down, so we made that back up, and then BKB actually crashed in front of us, so we kind of had to remake that up. So right now we're just kind of sitting in, and then we have Chi Alpha up the road, so we're trying to do a little bit of work.
Thank you. Back to you.
Thanks, Grace. Yeah, definitely an interesting spot for Jet Black to be in. I think Grace might have caught them right as they realized that Chi Alpha is a ways ahead. So Grace got a bit of coldness potentially from Jet Black there, but we see them. You know, they are half a lap nearing on ahead of the rest of the pack.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like, you know, the pack, they're out in like turn 3 right now. Teams aren't really wanting to pull right now, which is not great. You know, a lot of these attacks happen around lap 160. A lot of times they're not the ones that stick, but if the pack isn't willing to chase this down, it just might.
Well, Chi Alpha, I mean, they've come out of nowhere. You know, it was almost kind of in the turnover of Griffin's interview that it's out of nowhere. We've got a remarkably impressive Chi Alpha performance on the bike right now. The man who missed last year's race, Jazz Briggs, and kind of the chasing pack, if you will, is beginning to take up speed. They've kind of strung out a little bit more as they begin to kind of intensify. Beta Sigma Psi leading that group.
Yeah, and Jazz Briggs, I mean, he's throwing down 35-second laps pretty consistently. Those are pretty fast laps, especially for a breakaway attempt. So I'm curious to see if the pack, A, either, like we said, doesn't know they're off the front, or B, just nobody's willing to chase it down right now.
So we are seeing a bit more intensity. And you know, how much more, I mean, it's simple, you're riding by yourself, a lot more energy being used. For Chi Alpha, when you still have just under 40 laps to go, how hard is it to maintain? You see Jazz Briggs ducking his head, a lot of energy being exerted. How tough is it to kind of try and maintain this lead?
It is really, really tough, especially with this wind. You're out there by yourself taking the wind. You have no wheels to draft off of, and it's just you and your bike trying to, extend this lead as big as possible. So it is really difficult, especially on a hot day like today, where you really need to be on top of your hydration and whatnot. And when you're out there for a long time, you're yearning for that water. So I'm curious to see how this pans out.
We're seeing an exchange. Jonathan Frazier coming on, but right now with Sig Ep is Griffin Gonzalez.
Thanks, guys. Down here with Toby Todd, student coach for Sig Ep Cycling. Toby, it's been so long since we have seen a fraternity win this race. How have you guys been able to maintain your position and be where you are right now?
Well, just a lot of tactic. Going in, we know that we're working hard to keep ourselves at the beginning in the front of the line, and we're just kind of switching through there. And we do think that this year that we got it, and that it's finally time for the fraternity to come back and win Little 5.
How I want to ask about the track. That's a really important part of this race. How is it riding? Is it becoming more dry, I should say? And how do you guys plan to battle that?
So about that, we're checking our tire pressure constantly for different things like that. But yeah, it's getting drier as the day. The sun's coming up. We're here in mid-afternoon. It's a lot hotter than it was yesterday for the women's race. So we're keeping that in mind. Yeah, definitely. Just kind of playing it by ear,
Last one, obviously the heat is a big factor in today's race. Do you guys feel like you guys have the hydration, the agility, the strength it takes to finish this race out?
100%. We're focusing on our hydration and our nutrition throughout the entire race. And anytime somebody comes off the track, we got ice packs and wet towels and everything ready for them. So we're making sure that we're doing the best out here.
Sig Ep looking to break the streak and become the first fraternity to win in quite some time. Guys, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Griffin. Delta Tau Delta, the last fraternity to win in 2016, nearing on 6 years that a team has won. Well, Phi Kappa Psi in second, with Phi Delta Theta currently in and around it. There are numerous teams who have a chance to potentially be in and around that spot to win as a fraternity team.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like Chi Alpha's lead is kind of shrinking a little bit. They were almost up to a half lap. And it looks like a lot of teams have started to chase it down a little bit more. Maybe a straightaway at this point, I would say, and they just exchanged, so that lead will go a little bit down.
We got Carson Coquit, a senior, a rookie rider, though. He's coming onto the bike for Jonathan Frazier. They're clearly trying to keep guys rotating in and out. keeping their best two riders, Chase Madsen and Jazz Briggs, two guys who were in their last race, as it is for Cokewood as well. Interesting with how this one's panning out for Chi Alpha. But again, you know, you have a very hungry pack behind him. Laval currently leading the trailing group with BKB right behind him. Cutters following there. Sigap behind as well.
Yeah, at lap 162, you know, we're nearing that lap 170. These teams are really, they're keeping the pace quick, you know, obviously because Chi Alpha's off the front. They're a little bit lower than a straightaway ahead now, but it's interesting with these teams just continue to go off the front, so the pace continues to stay hot. And towards the end of the race, means like a lot of teams have burned a lot of their matches, like we said. You know, the teams that are really fit are the ones that are going to stay in this race. I'm curious to see if there's another big attack or if teams are just ready to sprint it out.
Yeah, I want to clarify, it was not Laval on the bike, it is Carson Ettner on the bike for Fieside at the moment. So the top 10 up top, Chi Alpha, their lead dwindled a little bit. They're still up by 7 seconds as of last calculation. Fieside, BKB, Cutters, Sigep, Jet Black, Grey Goat, Phi Delta, Theta, Beta Sigma Psi, and Phi Gamma Delta are the top 10 as things stand. About a 7-second lead for Chi Alpha, who have their 4th rider on the bike at the moment, trying to just keep that lead nearing the final 30 laps.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like we have Cutters on the front, Phi Psi riding their wheel. It looks like these are the contenders. You know, these are the contenders we said the entire day that would be there at the end of the race, and they're still together. You know, just kind of working together. We'll see who kind of throws the next punch.
We have another exchange being planned here for Chi Alpha. Carson Coquit coming out. Appears to be Chase Madsen with the chasing pack chasing right behind him. Madsen out of the bike with the pack right behind him. He crosses the start-finish line. The difference is continuing to dwindle, though, however, up by just 3 seconds now in what is shaping up to be a phenomenal final 30 laps.
Yeah, it looks like we have Sig up on the front, throwing down a pretty hot lap. They just pulled out there. I mean, these top contenders, these top 5 teams, like all of them are pulling pretty hard.
You see Cutters pulling incredibly hard through the middle. Chi Alpha conceding their lead. Chase Madsen falling in to try and just conserve some of his energy. They used a lot of it trying to pull the pack out. And so I guess if you're Chi Alpha now, you've got a fresh rider on, but you force the entire pack to catch up with you. Are they still in a good spot, even though they've kind of conceded that first place position?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they definitely used a lot of their matches, but, you know, the pace is slowing down a little bit now. As long as they can just kind of stay covered, stay off the front, they'll be able to recharge, get some of their fresher riders out there. I think they'll be okay.
Jet Black now taking a bit of an edge. No changes pending for some of the contenders. Beta Sigma Psi, who after having a very strong start, they're now in 9th. They've fallen off a little bit. They just made an exchange coming onto the bike for them. I believe is Alex Cora. We'll verify for that in a moment. And now an incredibly strung out. Appears to be almost all the riders are utilizing the burn for Phi Delta Theta.
Yep, so Phi Delta Theta is going to exchange, and the pack's going to go right by them. Hopefully this rider can get back on the pack quickly.
So we mentioned Laval, not a sprinter for Phi Psi. When do you go on to try and make a move where you avoid that lap 200? You're in a sprint, dead sprint for the finish, because there may be guys out in the field who are better suited for that than Laval is.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if, you know, they make a big move around 175. They've already made, you know, kind of a bigger move around lap 90, but I don't think they spent too much of their matches because they were able to have other teams go with them. So, you know, Andrew, he's a great rider. He's still, you know, a top sprinter in the race, but I don't think that's his forte. You know, he's an aerobic engine. You know, he goes out there and just eats up laps at a very, very fast pace, and that's normally how breakaways start. So I'm curious to see if they make some sort of attempt in the next 10 to 15 laps.
Well, Cutters currently leading that group. It's been a lot more shuffling in there. Chi Alpha, who led a surprise half lap just about 10 laps ago. They've now fallen in. They're sitting about 7th place, but there are numerous teams who are in and around. Beta Sigma Psi, the team that kind of breaks, is the dividing point at 9th place. They're 24 seconds off the leader, but Phi Delta on up, all 2.5 seconds off of the leader. And the leader keeps changing lap on lap, trying to figure out the best way to conserve your energy for the back end. So Torin Kremaher on the bike for Cutters, They had an exchange pending. They pulled them out. When, Torn coming out, your strongest rider, he'll have to come back in a moment. When do you kind of foresee his exchange out and in down the rest of the stretch?
Yeah, him, and if you look at Black Bulls, they have their sprinter on the bike as well. So I think this is probably their last set before the sprint, potentially, if that's what they're going for. So I think you'll see them get off the bike here pretty soon, and they're pretty much going to rest up towards the end of the race.
10 bikes on the lead lap, meaning that it's an incredibly packed front group. Grego preparing for an exchange. They'll break off of it and allow one of their stronger riders, I believe that's Jacob Richards, to get onto the bike. Jacob Richards onto the bike, now going to have to catch back up to that group.
Yes, we got Cutters on the front again. Torn's doing a lot of this work up front. You know, he's got an engine, that's for sure. He doesn't look too tired either, so he's been out in the wind a lot today, on the front a lot. That's a strong rider for sure. It looks like all those teams are kind of, they're just kind of waiting right now, it seems like. That's the vibe I'm getting. Some exchanges are going to definitely happen. It will break it up a little bit.
Chase Madsen is going for a burn. I believe they're going to prepare to bring in Jazz Briggs. He's going off for a big burn here.
Yeah, you see Chase Madsen, he just coasted through that turn. That is deteriorating. It's because he doesn't feel like he has the traction to keep pedaling through it. That's definitely going to be a storyline if this comes down to a sprint.
And you mentioned with the wind that whoever's leading, potentially entering turn 4, might be the winner of the race based on how it hits you. So kind of when does your move have to happen if you have that in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of teams will kind of come out of turn 3 in years past, but with this wind, it might be more of a get your position in turn 3. So a lot of teams coming out of turn 2. They might be doing it in turn 3 this year. And to your point, with this wind coming out of the southwest, it's kind of pushing riders through turn 4 in a way. So with this small gear ratio, it's only at 46.18, so it's really hard to get going super fast on it. So if you got a tailwind behind you as well, it's not going to be easy for teams to come around.
Cutters out in front. Trying to verify if it's still Cray Maher on the bike. Not sure if we missed an exchange. But it would be surprising if they had just gotten back up to that spot. But no, it is still Cray Maher who is on the bike for Cutters. Still don't have a change pending. Interesting how much has had to ride him out for the rest of the stretch.
I'm curious to see what his total lap number is at the end of this race. He's doing a lot of Cutters laps.
And he's also pulling this lead pack, which is going quite fast. So I guess in his spot, do you think he's trying to just exhaust some of the other riders behind him by using his endurance?
A little bit. I am impressed with this work. If I was him, I would get off the front and kind of go to the back a little bit more. But I mean, he's clearly fit. He seems like he's doing just fine.
We see Faisai now pulled up into the front. Torn has their wheel. On his wheel is Jet Black. And behind him as well as Signify Epsilon. Jet Black going for a burn on the outside though.
Yeah, it looks like Cutters is doing a big move kind of off the front. I'm curious to see if they're going to try to exchange as well, or if they're just chasing down this Jet Black exchange.
Yeah, they couldn't get quite onto him to chase his wheel, but it will be a Jet Black exchange. I don't believe that Cutters were ready to do an exchange themselves just yet, so they haven't primed someone over there. The entire stretch beyond the start-finish line is just waiting. They're allowing all their riders who are on the bikes at the moment to control the fate, entering into the final 20 laps of today's race. What a race it has been so far, Charlie.
Yeah, absolutely. This is honestly one of the most exciting races I've seen in the last few years. A lot of times teams are just, content to be doing 40 to 42 second laps. We've seen most of this race sub 40 seconds.
Primed for a very strong finish. Breaking down who's where. Cutters, Sigma Phi Epsilon, Phi Kappa Psi, Black Bulls, Jet Black, Phi Delta Theta, Grey Goat, and Chi Alpha. The 8 teams that are in and around with a chance of winning. We have just hit the 2-hour mark of today's race, 2:01. Really beginning to test and dig deep into the endurance of these riders.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're getting to that stage in the race, like we've said before, that I'm curious to see if there's another big move. I'm really curious to see when, Andrew Val gets on the bike for Faisai. But, yeah, the pace is slowing down a lot right now.
There's a huge amount of riders on that lead lap. Not all of them, only 8 of them are, involved in the race in terms of being competitive. Beta Sigma Psi, the most closely competing team. They're in 9th place. We've seen an incredible slowing of the pace of this lead pack.
An interesting development in the race is there's a big lap counting scoreboard, and that's how teams know what lap they're on, and it keeps going out. So I'm curious to see if teams are a little bit worried about not knowing exactly what lap they are in the race right now.
Definitely an interesting factor. Kind of just resetting where we're at. We're at Bill Armstrong Stadium. I'm Jack Edwards alongside Charlie Hammond for the 71st running of the men's Little 500. It's been a fantastic one so far. Only one yellow flag, a handful of crashes, but it's been a good race, and we're primed with 8 teams with a chance at this moment in time, with 18 laps to go, a chance to try and win. And a number of these teams, it would be first-time champions if they're able to come out on top.
Yeah, we saw a first-time champion yesterday. Seeing another one today would be very exciting.
And in the pits now with Phi Delta Theta is our man, Griffin Gonzalez, with some more.
What has it been for you guys? Obviously, you guys have been in the top 10 for majority of it.
Yeah, the race so far has really just been maintaining our position and making sure that we're keeping up with all the moves that are happening.
Obviously, select few laps left. What's the strategy for this? When do you go sprint, and what are you looking for?
The strategy is we just got to keep the race together and take what the race gives us. It's been a pretty chaotic race so far, getting involved in a crash. So it's just hanging in there and making it to the end of the race at this point.
Best of luck the rest of the way, Coach.
Thanks, Griffin. You know, it's definitely, you can see the stress on his face as he's trying to manage the back end of this race. There is a lot going on at the moment. Cutter's still out in front, still Cremar. He's got an exchange pending. It looks like he may go for a burn, but you can see all the riders behind him will be primed to be chasing him and marking him. We're past the territory of allowing someone to go for a burn and not marking them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're, lap 184. I mean, this is getting to that point where maybe there's going to be a big breakaway attempt, and we're getting to the point where we might just see a sprint.
Cutters out in front. Sigma Phi Epsilon right behind them. Phi Delta Theta in third. Phi Kappa Psi in fourth. Blackie Bulls in fifth. Interestingly, no Andrew Laval on the bike. We're seeing a bit of a burn attempt here by Phi side. There is no exchange pending. They may just try to go for a move right here. They're utilizing a bit of the wind behind Wild Aces. He's going to pass him. No marking here. They didn't get on the wheel of Phi side.
Yeah, this is definitely a move from Phi side. They don't have a rider in their pit. This is their move at lap 185 to see if this will stick. I assume, so they're not putting Andrew Laval on the bike next. It doesn't seem like in their pit, so they're going to have one other rider get on the bike before I assume they'll give it to Andrew. But this is a big attack.
So here is Phi side. They're going for an exchange. Chasing them desperately is Sigma Phi Epsilon, trying to keep things close.
Yeah, so they want Phi side. Their pit is saying one more lap, one more lap. Try to extend this lead as much as you can. You're seeing the teams of Cutters, Jet Black, Phi Delta Theta, and Blackie Bulls trying to chase it down right now.
Cutters exchanging. Torn coming out of the race. A bit of a slow exchange there, and Phi side continuing to take a big lead out in the front, benefiting from keeping themselves on the bike for one more lap after a bit of a chaotic sequence of exchanges down in that side of the pits. Coming around turn 4 for the exchange.
Yeah, so we're getting close to that point where, some of the top riders are going to get on the bike. This Phi Psi exchange just happened, so, Phi Delta Theta, Blackie Bulls, Jet Black are kind of shut it down. Grey Goat is chasing as well as along with SIGAP and Chi Alpha, but there is a little bit of a splintering of the pack right now. Yeah. There's kind of, Phi Psi out in front, a chase group, and then a second chase group behind them.
Yeah, well, Phi Psi with Jack Warner, a fresh biker on the bike. Seen Laval talking to his teammates in the pit, saying his name a lot, but it's Phi Psi who as a group have themselves out with a solid lead here. Blackie Bulls following in second. Jet Black, as well as Phi Delta Theta in and around a splintered front group nearing the final 10 laps of the race.
Yeah, so I think really the strategy right now for Phi Psi is eat up as many laps as they can to give Andrew Laval the biggest lap gap possible, and then he's just going to try to finish out the race.
Now Laval's strong suit is not sprinting, but if given a decent lead, you trust him to be as one of the better riders in the field, to be the man who gets you over the finish line. It appears that he's not the one closest to the bike. He's saying one more. I don't think he's going to be the next one exchanging, but he's saying to his teammate one more.
Yeah, it looks like Black Key Bulls is going to exchange to their rider, Gavin Goody. I assume that he's going to be finishing out the race for them.
At what point does it become the last rider comes on? 10 laps, 5 laps?
Yeah, so I would say right around now is when riders will get on. Ideally, if the pack was together, sprinters won't come on until maybe 5 laps to go. But with the splintering right now and Faisai off the front, they might opt to have their top riders get on now to chase this down and just sprint it out.
Well, here they are for an exchange here. It's not Laval coming onto the bike. And with 11 laps to go, coming on now is the number 4 rider for the team. For Phi Kappa Psi, it's Caleb Cooper coming on. Laval still on the sidelines. But they still have a pretty healthy lead. Chasing them in second place is Sigma Phi Epsilon. The pack has certainly splintered, left a few teams in its wake. Beta Sigma Psi preparing for an exchange. They're the team just on the outside of the top 8 teams who were in that lead pack, but now all of a sudden Phi Kappa Psi has a 7-second lead on Sig Ep, 10 on Black Key Bulls, and 15 on Cutters.
Yeah, it looks like Faisai's lead is a little bit under a straightaway right now to the chase pack of Jet Black, Black Key Bulls, and Phi Delta Theta.
Cutters preparing for an exchange as well, swerving out, getting themselves to get in there, just doing well enough to keep himself for not having a fault on the exchange. Getting on the bike for Cutters is Peyton Gaskell.
It looks like Sig Ep just put themselves back in the race. They just connected with that chase group. So hopefully those 4 teams that they want to contend in this sprint, they're going to get together and chase down this Faisai gap.
Faisai with the gap. They've passed start finish. They're currently 6 seconds ahead. Laval preparing to come in with under 10 laps to go to try and finish the job off. They couldn't get it done in 2019, couldn't get it done in 2021. They're trying to get it done here in 2022 down the stretch. Laval came on lap 199 in 2019. He's coming on several laps earlier. Chance for redemption. 8th and 5th they finished.
Yeah, so you'll see Faisai exchanging right now. And the front of the chase pack is going to see that exchange, and so what you'll see right now is they're going to make a huge effort to try to shut this down right now. But what you'll see is fresh legs like Andrew Laval can just ride off the front of this pack. And if they don't make connection, this might be the bike race.
It might be. Laval trying to use his speed to break away and take the lead. They're up by 7 seconds on Black Key Bulls, as well as Phi Delta Theta, Jet Black, and Sigma Phi Epsilon all behind.
This is a truly incredible experience, or incredible job by this chase pack. All of these riders between Jet Black, Phi Delta Theta, Black Key Bulls, Sig Ep, they are doing a lot of work together. They came together and said, let's shut this down, and all of them are putting an effort to do it.
They've reduced the gap on Laval. Jet Black in second. Black Key Bulls in third. Out front with Faisai still down into the business end of the race.
So it looks like Jet Black is going to exchange, actually. Maybe not this lap, but the next. And so that's big because, you know, they're going to fall down and they're going to have to get back to that group. And it looks like Andrew is sitting up a little bit. He said the move is over. Now he might be resting his legs to make one more big attack.
We're also seeing Sigma Phi Epsilon preparing for an exchange themselves as well. There was a burn there coming out of the race.
All right, now Andrew Laval with Faisai is attacking again.
He's attacking. He's going to give a bit of a draft potential for Jet Black, who want to make an exchange themselves. But Laval continuing to attack. He's not going to sit back in this race. 6 laps to go.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Andrew's a really good bike racer. I think he might have slowed down, let somebody pull through so that they can, you know, he can attack them again, get behind them, and he might be doing it again. The race keeps getting slow, and then Andrew kind of pulls away again, tries to attack again, and then it gets slow again. This is really that cat and mouse game, as we say in bike racing, where nobody wants to pull through, nobody wants to be on the front, and you're seeing Jet Black needs to get off the bike. They need to get their next rider on,
Laval
so they're going to be the one to exchange.
Yeah, Laval and so speeding up in that. You saw it in turn 1, turn 2, into that backstretch. You saw him speed up and really make it uncomfortable for Jet Black to make an exchange so late in the race. He knows it all too well what happens when you make an exchange at a bad spot, but they have slowed down immensely. Just a 43-second lap compared to 39 seconds for Grey Goat.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know it seems like Black Key Bowls, Gavin Goody is the person they're trying to finish this race. Obviously on Phi side, Andrew Laval is as well. I'm curious to see if Phi Delta Theta and Sig App are going to exchange. It seems like Jet Black wants to, but they just don't have the right timing.
I think you saw the rider trying to exchange onto the bike, was waving him in, but he waved him off. There's just 5 laps to go. Is it too late to exchange now if you're Jet Black?
I mean, it's getting to that point because as soon as they do, everybody. So Jet Black is definitely burning right now to exchange, and everybody is marking them. And you see Andrew Laval, he's sitting 5th wheel behind everyone because I think he's trying to wait his turn to take a bigger attack. He's kind of navigating this pack and seeing when he can make his next big move.
He's prowling a bit deeper, 4 laps to go. Jet Black preparing for an exchange very late in this race, trying to get the last bit of legs going. Exchange speed is decent. They're back on the bike, trying to keep themselves up.
And it looks like Andrew Laval is doing another attack right now, coming around the pack in turn 4.
There is Laval. Takes first place again. He wants to pull the final few laps. 3 laps to go. He's also slowing it down again. He is relentless. Cutter's making an exchange here. They fall off a little bit. They're in 7th place. Chi Alpha's fallen off the pace as well. It's become a much smaller group towards the top. It's Phi Psi, Phi Delta, Theta, Sigma Phi Epsilon, and Black Key Bulls all within a second of each other. Jet Black 4 seconds behind. They've caught up though, and it's now a 5-team group towards the front. Lap 197.
This is very exciting. This is the bike race, those 5 teams. I think it's going to come down to a sprint at this point. All of those teams have their top rider on the race. Phi Delta Theta has their ITT winner, missing out champion, and Jimmy Kulik. It looks like Grey Goat has, one of their top riders as well. So
he's just not in there. They were going slow, allowed him a chance to get in there. 6 teams in that lead group with 2 laps to go.
They are going slow right now. This is the game of cat and mouse. We're going to see how they jockey for position.
And Torin Cray Maher making it a 7-team group coming out of the back. 7 teams out in the front with a chance to win. Out leading it all, Phi Delta Theta, Sigma Phi Epsilon, Grey Goat. Cray Maher taking a big move forward.
Cutters got back in this race because that pace slowed down. They were able to catch back on. Oh, we got a crash.
A huge crash on the stretch. Laval is down. Several teams are down. Jet Black, Phi Delta Theta, Sigma Phi Epsilon as the white flag goes. Jet Black is still alive. Laval is down on the track. A yellow flag might go as Laval is still down.
We have Black Key Bulls down. We have Phi Side down. We have Grey Goat down. All those riders are not
everyone
getting
out.
back up.
There's a sprint down the back stretch. They're keeping the flags down.
Yeah, those riders are hurt. Andrew and Gavin, it needs to go yellow. I'm surprised
the
they haven't
checkered
thrown
flag
the
is out. There's no yellow flag at the sprint for the finish for the 71st Little 500. Phi Delta Theta takes it. For the first time since 2016, a fraternity wins the Little 500. Laval, for a 2nd year in a row, crashes late. There's a huge crash on the stretch. It's a question of would it be yellow or checkered. It's checkered as Phi Delta Theta finishes lap 200 in 1st place.
That was a crazy finish. We'd like to see a replay of that crash. It looked like somebody...
Griffin Gonzalez is in the pit with the winning Phi Delta Theta. Griffin, take it away.
Coach, you've done it. You've broken the streak. A fraternity is the winner of the 2022 Little 500. What's going through your mind?
It's incredible, man. Can't even put into words how long and hard that journey is. This isn't an easy race to win. They put in the time, they put in the energy. These guys deserve it all. Just speechless right now. It's just unbelievable.
Talk to me about your decision-making there at the end with Kulik.
Phi Side was off the front, and we had no choice but to put him in. Phi Side had the gap, and if we didn't close it, they win. So it was simply do or die right there, and Jimmy had to tough it out to the end of the race.
Let's get Kulik. Jimmy, yeah. Jimmy, you've done it, man. It was a stretch to the finish for a wild ending, but a fraternity is back on top. How does it feel?
Feels amazing, man. It's been 3 years in the making. Every single day working my ass off with these three guys. I couldn't have pictured it any other way. This is how it's done. Greek teams are back on top. It's going to stay that way for the years coming.
And Jimmy, to do it in front of fans for the first time since 2019, what do you want to say to the Phi Delta Theta family?
We have the best support out of any team out here. It wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for these guys over here.
Ladies and gentlemen, your 2022 champions, Phi Delta Theta.
Greek teams are back on top. Phi Delta Theta, Sigma Phi Epsilon, Jet Black, Cutters, Gray Goats, and Phi Kappa Psi in 6th place. We wondered, could they do it again? But a crash down the stretch took out numerous teams. Only 5 teams finished the 200, but the podium teams are Phi Delta Theta, Sigma Phi Epsilon, and Jet Black. And in the confusion, you apologize to me, Charlie. No apologies required. The craziness of that final stretch, I mean, can you put it to words?
It was crazy because the crash happened and we kind of missed the white flag because it happened.
Yeah.
And Andrew's foot was still on the track as the race leaders were coming out of turn 4 to win the race. Like, you know, normally that would be a yellow flag, but obviously since it was the last lap, they didn't fly it. But wow, that was unbelievable. I couldn't exactly see what happened. It seemed like the Black Key Bulls rider. Here it is.
We have it again here. It's Black Key Bulls coming together with Gray Goat and Andrew Laval sitting in the back. Just collides right into him. Jet Black escaping on the side. Cutters, a team that was a bit further behind, also able to slide forward. But Phi Delta Theta and Sigma Phi Epsilon, since they were the 2 teams out in front, they were able to take it. And Phi Delta Theta with Jimmy Kulik winning ITTs, missing out, and the Little 500.
Yeah, good for him. I mean, Phi Delta Theta is one of the top teams in Little 500 history. Their alumni, Rob Lee, Ryan Romanesco, all those guys were so close to winning. In the 2012, 2013, 2014 time frame. It's awesome to see them finally have good luck in missing that crash, and also just having the top rider in the race who finished it off for them.
In 2nd place was Sigap. Griffin Gonzalez is with them now.
Obviously would have liked to get the win, but I can't say enough about all the community and all the other guys in this race, especially our fraternity brothers, Phi Psi, Phi Del, everybody. The Greek teams have really come back this year, and I'm just proud of this community to get this race back on top where it should be.
Will Pitts for Sigma Phi Epsilon coming in 2nd off a great finish.
Thank you, Griffin. It's hard to kind of put to words the craziness of that final stretch. We talked about it earlier in the race, fortune, and how lucky you have to be to win this race a lot of times. And you don't call it luck, call it skill by being in front. Phi Delta Theta, Sigma Phi Epsilon, the 2 fraternities, the leading 2 teams who avoided the collision between BKB and Gray Goat, and being able to finish the race.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think I talk about luck because in 2014, Phi Delta Theta had a really, really good shot at winning the race, and they got into a similar crash. To see them come this year, not get caught up in the crash, and then, and having the top rider in the race, he won ITTs, he won missing out, and he was able to avoid it. It's just awesome to see, some of that bad luck not go towards Phi Delta Theta as it has in the past, and finally get this win that they've been yearning for a while.
And Phi Delta Theta, we talked about them and SIGAP so much throughout the race. Wow, they're pulling a lot. Wow, they're out in front a lot. They were still able to come out on top in the final end of the race. Where does it's tough, so soon after to kind of break down that film. Where do you kind of assess that, Charlie, and where their biggest success came in this race?
Yeah, I mean, they stayed at the front of the bike race the entire time, always, pushing the race forward, making sure that they were in good position. And, clearly Jimmy Kulik had, he was the missing out champion. He knew where he needed to put his bike and make sure he stayed out of crashes. It was truly an awesome performance by them.
The Phi Delta Theta will celebrate long into the night for winning 2001 for a 4th time champions of the Little 500. Our executive producer, Galen Clavio, broadcasting that race. Coming a bit full circle for him there. And Jet Black, coming in 3rd. You talk about the top 3 teams, number 8 in quals, number 5 in quals, number 9 in quals. I'm not saying that quals isn't a good indicator of team success, but, Is this I mean, it's definitely a surprise front three, it has to be said, Charlie.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all of those teams, they were the teams that we said at the start were going to be here at the end of the race. And so, you know, I don't think any of them finished any, you know, better than they should have. They all were top teams. You know, it is unfortunate to have, you know, those 3 teams that were contenders go down, but at the end of the day, all of those teams were very, very strong and absolutely deserved their podium finishes.
I know when we were talking about ahead of this race, Phi Delta Theta sitting in 8th place, but they have the best rider. They had the best rider on the bike at the best moment, ahead of the pack, able to win that final sprint for the finish. So to reiterate, we'll go through an entire top 10 as we see Laval on camera. We'll go through the full 33 as a matter of fact. We'll start from the very bottom. McNutt, Evan Scholars, Phi Gamma Nu, Phi Sigma Kappa in 30th. Army Cycling and the Dead 29, and Quals 29 finish. Lambda Chi Alpha, Delta Upsilon, Team 25 and Spot 26. Alpha Kappa Psi in 25th. Sigma Nu, Sigma Chi, Wild Aces Cycling, Beta Theta Pi, Sigma Alpha Epsilon, Nova Cycling in 19th, IUDM Cycling in 18th, Ghost Cycling, Delta Sigma Pi, CSF Cycling, 3PH Cycling in 14th place, Forest Cycling in 13th, Bears in 12th, Alpha Sigma Phi, Phi Gamma Delta in 10th place, BKB after a crash very late on, couldn't finish the final 2 laps. They finished in 9th, Beta Sigma Psi in 8th place, Chi Alpha in 7th, Phi Kappa Psi in 6th, Grey Goat 5, Cutters 4. The Jet Black, you see them on the stage right now. They're number 3, Sigma Phi Epsilon, and Phi Delta Theta to have their moment in just a moment. I mean, Jet Black, you know, after winning last year's race, you get Josh Herbst back. You see him on the far right there. Are they happy? I mean, you couldn't say they're happy with third, obviously, but their race as a whole, your thoughts on that, Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you know, coming into this race before Josh came back, I think they were a little bit, you know, not as strong as they were last year, and teams kind of undervalued them. So it's awesome to see their top rider come in and get a podium finish. You know, it is always tough to not take that first place, and as competitors, you know, it's kind of the idea of if you're not first, you're last. But you know, they looked happy on the podium. I always like it when the second and third place teams are stoked to be there.
We're seeing Sigma Phi Epsilon take their spot up top. Pablo Fierce Garcia, Will Pitts, Drew Gavitt, and Jesus Garcia, part of that team that finished in second place, just beaten by half a bike in that final, you know, end of the lap.
Yeah.
We've spoken for so long, Charlie, I've ran out of words.
Absolutely. I mean, that was honestly one of the most exciting races I have seen in a long time. You know, having those big attacks, lap 90 to 130, you don't see that very often. And then, you know, clearly Phi Psi trying to attack even more around lap 150, 160, and then having like an incredible sprint finish with a huge crash that, you know, was a big factor in the race. Like, that was truly one of the most exciting races I've seen in a long time. And, you know, I'm just so happy that all the fans were here to be able to see it.
Yeah, and in terms of happiness level, you know, obviously second is an incredible achievement, you know, in a field of 33 for Sigma Phi Epsilon. You know, what are the emotions going through their head right now?
Yeah, I mean, you know, like you said, they qualified 8th. They were a top team. I think they were a little bit of a dark horse. I think we said that before the race started. You know, to finish second is an awesome achievement. And you know, all those SIG Up guys are really great. They have a phenomenal alumni foundation behind them. So it's always good to see, you know, those guys do well.
And in just a moment, they're beginning to take the track with their fraternity brothers out on the track itself. They're taking the stage as the last team up there, the winners of the 2022 Little 500, Phi Delta Theta, embracing race director Hank Duncan.
Yeah,
what
this
an impressive
team,
performance.
Yeah, it really was. This team, you know, like Jimmy said in his post-race interview, it's been 3 years in the making for them. You know, they're a traditionally very, very strong team. I think they went through a little bit of a lull because they had a bunch of people graduate and they had new guys trying to figure it out. But clearly these guys did, and they got it done today.
For a fourth time, Phi Delta Theta on top of the Little 500. You know, they said that Greek teams back on top. It's tough to forecast a year out from now, Charlie. But it is a broken, you know, stigma since 2016, Delta Tau Delta. First time a team that has won has been a Greek team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's mostly respectful, but there's always that divide between the independent teams and the Greek teams, and it has been a lot of, you know, Black Key Bulls, Cutters, Jet Black that have won in the last few years. So I get it. You know, Greek teams get frustrated and they want to have a Greek team back on top, and you know, we got it done today.
The championship trophy hoisted high.
Yeah, there's truly no better feeling than what these guys are going through right now. Like, you feel like you're king of the world. You feel like you're king on campus in Bloomington. It is honestly one of the best feelings you'll ever have in your life. So I'm excited that these guys get to have that feeling and, you know, celebrate for many weeks to come.
Borg Warner Trophy won by Phi Delta Theta. Andrew Murray, Jimmy Kulik, Mitchell Party, Elias Kanau, their student coach, Ray Crowley, and Jeff Baumount, members of the winning team of the 2022 Little 500 men's race. 71st running, and what a race it was, Charlie.
Yeah, like we said, this is truly one of the most exciting races I've seen in a long time. So it's awesome to see this team come out on top and just all of the, I mean, those top 5 teams, they're constantly, you know, throwing punches at each other. Teams are crashing and getting back onto the pack. Like, there was just so much stuff going on.
Well, it was a thrilling race from start to finish. I want to take a moment to thank our entire production crew from the top. Production manager Eric Garibrandt, the engineer in charge Mitch Gamboa, technical manager Drew Riggs, our director Ethan Yee, the assistant director Deacon Long, our technical director Christian Steiner, on replay Michael Lau and Eamon Fowler, our graphics man Peyton Beatrey, and video engineer Kenton Elson, audio engineer Duncan Henderson, the A2 Ben Harvey on cameras, Kirsten Ashby, Lauren Boer, Charlie Gifford, Lily Hunt, Gabe Neff, Sean Neef, Jonathan Smith, and on utility Riley Roberts and Sarah Kirsten, as well as our producer Emma Watson and our executive producer Dr. Galen Clavio. It was a thrilling race from start to finish. Seeing some of the highlights of it here, Charlie. Towards the very end, we saw Jet Black Atina finish in 3rd place. A lot of back and forth all the way throughout. It was nearly a final race of 7 teams, but what a race it was.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't thank the media school enough for putting on this production. It's, you know, it's so great to see students come here and put on like an amazing production. This is all, you know, student run race, so it's so cool. I can't thank you enough for being here and understanding this race and becoming an expert of Little 500 to put it on.
It is an honor, Charlie. Your last time up here in the broadcast booth, a phenomenal job for 3 years. A lot of adversity, a lot of different moments, as well as our pit reporters, Griffin Gonzalez and Gracie Barra, incredible members of the IU Sports Media program for the last 4 years, their last broadcast as well. An honor to work with them constantly, week in, week out. Well, what a race it was in the very end. Finishing 3rd, Jet Black. In 2nd, Sigma Phi Epsilon, Phi Delta Theta, your champions of the 2022 Men's Little 500.